Chapter 869. There was a gray tower-like structure with a strange conical altar in the center. It was pointed at the bottom and round at the top, just like a several dozen meter long awl inserted into the ground. It was made of dark crystal and there were countless runes drawn on it. There was a gray-robed necromancer priest sitting on top of the altar with his arms open, silently chanting an incantation. The source energy array on the altar released a dark red glow and a thick energy was being extracted from the ground like water. It was then spread out through the awl-like structure, finally being stored in the towers of death. As more and more energy was accumulated in the towers, some of the energy leaked out. As it rubbed against each other, it created black lightning. Several hundred towers of death gathered a terrifying amount of energy. The necromancer priest slowly put down his hands. His hands were completely withered like tree branches and the face under the cloak was also a completely withered face. There was only a layer of lifeless dark purple skin sticking to his bones and there were blue-purple undead flames coming from his eyes. Without a doubt, it was not a living being, rather it was a lich. The lich's withered face did not have any expression and in fact it could not make any expressions. It was very difficult for a lich to have any emotions. He had even forgotten the feelings of joy, anger, sorrow, and joy. Even for a normal being, 2,000 years was enough to make them old and tired, not to mention a lich that had no sense of touch, smell, sight, hearing, or desire. He had long forgotten what it felt like to be a living being. From the moment he turned into a lich, he was destined to lose the instincts of a living being. What he was doing now was just a way of doing things that was imprinted in the depths of his soul. He was like a machine that followed this order. As for success or failure, it did not make any difference to him. A lich that had lived for 2,000 years, all traces of a living being had disappeared long ago. He was destined to be an obsession. The lich's floating body coincidentally overlapped with the moon. An incomparably awkward and complicated incantation came out from his mouth. The surrounding towers of death all trembled, and with a thunderous sound, the 100 towers of death erupted with energy at the same time. Like a volcano, a wave of death energy poured into the sky, forming a large dark cloud that covered the sky. Sir, the energy in these ruins is too strong. It is simply inexhaustible. A necromancer priest said to the lich in a low voice, as long as it accumulates a certain amount, we can bombard Green City in one go and those stupid gnomes will instantly die. At that time, Green City will be your territory and no one will be able to resist us. We can use this energy to produce large amounts of undead, becoming the overlord of this area. That human will come. The lich opened his mouth to speak. More accurately, he did not open his mouth because the human organs on the lich's body were already useless, so he could not use his vocal cords to communicate. The lich used spirit energy to make the air around him vibrate, creating an effect similar to speaking. This required a very high level of spirit energy control and normal cultivators would not be able to grasp it even if they studied for several decades. However, for the lich that had an almost infinite lifespan, problems that could be solved with time were not a problem. His voice did not seem like it came from a living being, it was like the dry sound of a machine grinding against each other. It was sharp and unpleasant to listen to, without any anger at all. The necromancer priest said in a very disdainful voice, "It's just a trivial human, why do we need to care about him? Not to mention that we have obtained the power of the ruins, they will die if they charge in." The lich did not explain, but he knew in his heart that this human was not simple. He had lived for over 2,000 years, so he still had this bit of judgment. Everyone set off and blocked the Green City army. In another 48 hours, the ceremony will be completed. I do not want to be interrupted. The lich was the absolute authority in the necromancer priest's mind, therefore no one would resist or question the lich's orders. At dawn, on the central plains of Green City, 100,000 soldiers had already gathered. The gnome Great Elder and Green City High Priest Clark, the demonic god priest Dolores, the Minotaur Arnold, the shaman priest Luz, and several local chiefs had all gathered. Because of the urgency of the situation, there was no time for more troops to gather. This world did not care about quantity, but quality. If the army in the center of the Forest of Chaos was dragged to the southern summer country, the battle strength of 100,000 people was enough to destroy the southern summer imperial region's army. "We are already prepared. We ask the high priest to command." The atmosphere was very heavy. Everyone had already realized that this battle did not just concern a city. Several hundred miles of forest would be affected. Even the life and death of their clansmen would be affected. Chu Tian was an outsider after all, so he did not understand the terrain of the forest and the troops. Therefore, Clark had to command this battle. Clark looked around with knitted brows. "Where's the acting city lord? Why isn't he here yet?" He's here. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Tian brought 18 silent figures over. "I found helpers and accidentally came late. I'm truly sorry." Everyone was a bit stunned. Wasn't this brat alone? Where did these 18 fellows come from? Although they had never seen these 18 people before, when they stood beside Chu Tian, there was a strong mountain-like pressure. The divine blood in corpses had been tempered by the divine blood for a long time, so naturally they had been reborn. From the skin to the bones, from the flesh to the marrow, they had all been tempered. Not only did they have the defensive power of a peak defensive cultivation technique, they also had a trace of an indestructible spiritual god. The divine blood in corpses no longer had any weaknesses. Whether it was the normal elemental energies of water, fire, wind, or earth, or the lightning that undead monsters feared the most, the divine blood in corpses had a strong resistance to them. Even if they were cut in half with a single attack or had their heads blown to pieces, these attacks that could be considered fatal to living beings or even undead creatures would find it hard to kill them. The divine blood in corpses' undead aura had been washed away. That faint trace of spiritual god's power was enough to intimidate normal living beings. This was not a difference in strength, but rather the pressure a high-level life form had on a low-level life form. It was like an elephant looking at an ant. The second true spirit layer. It was around the second true spirit layer. Clark's pupils slightly shrank. Even in Green City, it was very difficult to find 18 people in the second true spirit layer as guards. Not to mention the fact that these 18 divine blood in corpses were like 18 statues of gods. Even people with deep strength like Clark could not help but feel a sense of danger. These were not normal experts. Everyone, don't be surprised. These 18 fellows are not people, they are just puppets I casually made when I was bored. Chu Tian had an indifferent look on his face. It was like the divine blood in corpse was bored and took a piss and mud to make a rough product. The situation was urgent this time, so I brought them over. I thought they would be of a bit of help. The divine blood in corpses were still in corpses in the end, they could not give birth to life. Therefore, the in corpses, especially the in corpses refined into puppets, had no life force, no ability to think, and even their souls had been refined. Therefore, they could be transported in the space warehouse. All right, there's no time to lose, we'll immediately set off. Clark did not have time to ask. We'll split into 4 groups and each group will be divided into 10 small groups. We'll attack along the following routes. Clark began to closely arrange everything. 100,000 people was a very large number. It was impossible for this large group to spread out in the forest, so they could only split into different groups to attack at the same time. When the sun rises, the undead will be weakened to a certain degree. We'll send these fellows back to the embrace of the Nether God. Alright, kill. Everyone's morale was high. This battle was not only important to Green City, it also had a large meaning to Chu Tian. Chu Tian lacked a chance for the entire city to acknowledge him. Let's go. At the break of dawn, the Green City army of 100,000 set off. They split into several small groups and entered the forest as fast as they could, heading in the direction of the valley. These 100,000 people were all natives of the Forest of Chaos, so they couldn't charge at each other in the forest like they did on the plains. However, when the army was split into countless small groups, they could quickly move through the forest and maintain a high level of formation. Like this, even if there was a sudden change, they wouldn't be defeated like a landslide. Dolores turned around and shouted at Chu Tian, "The withered forest is in front of us." Chu Tian nodded, "Be careful." The withered forest was the first forest to be contaminated by the death energy. The entire forest was soaked in a thick death energy, and there were no signs of any living creatures. Hundreds of thousands of indigenous people had died here, and it had become a tourist spot for living creatures. The little fox called out a few times. "Pay attention, there are large amounts of undead creatures in front of us." Almost at the same time, warnings came from all around them. Following this was a low roar like that of a wild beast as countless gargoyles fell from the sky, charging at their prey like eagles. "This is bad. It's the gargoyles." The undead religion's undead puppets were very hard to deal with, not to mention that each gargoyle had a necromancer on its back. When the gargoyles charged down, pitiful cries came from all directions in the forest. This sudden and fierce attack had clearly caught everyone off guard. After the first round of attacks, there were heavy footsteps coming from the ground. 5 abominations led over 10,000 corpse eaters and countless zombies, densely covering the forest. They seemed like they had been waiting for a long time. There were many of them, forming a large defensive line that was used to cushion Green City's attacks. Chapter 870. Necromancy was one of the rare attributes. There were very few cultivators on the continent with necromancy talent, and there were even fewer top scholars in this field. The Lich was one of the best and had the qualifications to become an undead sage, so he had the qualifications to be proud and confident. This array was dug out from the ruins, and the Lich had studied it for a long time before putting it into practice. How could an outsider see through it with a single glance? It was because he was too confident, or because he was too rational. The Lich left the altar to stop Chu Tian from destroying the undead tower. Who would have thought that it would backfire? Like this, even if he merged with the bone dragon, the Lich's advantage would be gone. The Lich dragon knew that controlling the altar meant controlling everything in the valley, so all the power gathered here would be controlled by Chu Tian. With this power, Chu Tian would become an invincible existence. The Lich dragon could only hope that Chu Tian could kill him when he was still not familiar with controlling the altar. That way, there would still be a chance for him to turn the situation around. The Lich dragon gathered large amounts of blue and green flames that turned into a wave of flames that shot at the altar. However, when the altar was attacked, it was blocked by the dense necromancy energy around it. Even with the Lich dragon's power, it could not break through. He was about to be disappointed. Chu Tian was already in complete control of the situation. "Chu Tian," while controlling the array, he shouted, "Don't you know how strong this altar's control is? Just surrender." Of course, the Lich dragon did not surrender. Its body was filled with blue flames that suddenly came out of its bones and exploded like fireworks. There were countless blue lights that were like tentacles that fell onto the surrounding towers, connecting all of them together. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. This fellow really did have some skills. Connecting itself to the towers, even if the altar's control was taken away, the Lich dragon could still absorb energy from the towers. After all, the towers were personally made by the Lich, so he was very familiar with them. In just a few seconds, the flames in the Lich dragon's body became more than 10 times stronger. The blue and green flames came out of its body like crystals, forming a solid shell over its body. This fierce and terrifying skeleton dragon actually turned into a giant dragon carved from crystal in this short period of time. Everyone's faces fell. The Lich dragon could actually do this? If it was like this, Chu Tian would not be able to defeat the Lich dragon even if he controlled the altar. The Lich dragon could use the power of the towers to gather its power, so its strength was unimaginable. Chu Tian was too weak, so he had no way of defeating the Lich dragon. Roar! The solidified flames on the Lich dragon's body continued to condense, turning from blue to dark blue before finally turning gray. This was already an undead monster that had never been heard of before. The skeletons under the Lich dragon were shaken by this roar and fell down like harvested wheat. The soul flames in their skulls were scattered and they were all instantly killed by this aura. But at this time, the death energy that the Lich had poured into the sky over the past few days condensed back bit by bit. Like a giant bolt of lightning, it suddenly fell down on the altar Chu Tian was on. The sky collapsed. The sky collapsed. It was like a large hole had been opened in the sky and countless streams of dark gray energy wildly poured down like a waterfall. The energy that the Lich had prepared to destroy Green City in a single blow had been completely withdrawn at this moment. It completely surrounded the altar and turned into a large black ocean. "Quickly run!" Everyone cried out in alarm when they saw the black waves rushing towards them. They could no longer help in this situation. If they were to be engulfed by the sea of death, they would turn into undead monsters in an instant. Everyone hurriedly retreated from the area. When they looked back, the entire basin was pitch black like a large bowl filled with black liquid. Everything had already been submerged and no one knew what was happening inside. At this time, a crazy roar resounded in the Black Sea. An undead dragon, whose entire body was grayish-black, as if made of crystal, flapped his huge wings and soared into the sky. His whole body was surrounded by the aura of countless vengeful spirits. He opened his huge mouth, and the surrounding energy quickly gathered towards him. In just an instant, a black energy ball with a diameter of 3 to 4 meters was formed. The black energy ball was still wildly expanding with countless bolts of lightning surrounding it. The might of this attack was not inferior to the Lich's attack from the undead tower. Clark's face sunk. With this monster's strength, perhaps even a spirit transformation cultivator would find it hard to deal with it. "I think the city lord is in danger." Chu Tian had already released the energy to deal with Green City, so Green City was completely safe now. However, with this terrifying undead dragon here, wouldn't Green City not be safe? After several generations of gnome experts, there were no spirit transformation cultivators guarding this place. If they met this kind of attack, perhaps they would suffer heavy losses. Only Chu Tian had a way to deal with these undead monsters. If Chu Tian lost and was killed by the Lich Dragon, Green City would not be able to avoid a disaster. Clark and the gnomes had no choice but to admit a fact. The human they had always looked down on, the human they were not willing to accept, was actually an important person supporting the survival of Green City. He had basically become Green City's only hope. The Lich Dragon flapped its wings and the black hole-like energy ball flew into the center of the basin. Wherever it went, space trembled and the momentum was earth-shattering. It was very shocking to hear. At this moment, a giant black sword soared into the sky and cleaved the energy ball in half. The black ocean quickly gathered in the middle and finally formed an incomparably huge figure. He looked like an indomitable 10-eyed demon god. 9 of his eyes were tightly shut, and only one of his grayish-black eyes was open. He was incomparably large with a pair of wings on his back. He looked down on all living beings and he held a giant black sword in his hand, just like a war god from the underworld. What is this? When things developed to this point, everything had already surpassed their imaginations. The Lich Dragon could feel that this powerful demon god monster was actually created by Chu Tian using the power of the array and the undead energy. As for how he did it, the Lich Dragon was not clear. Even with his 2,000 years of knowledge, he had never heard of such a terrifying and powerful cultivation technique in this world. Not to mention him. Even the most intelligent person in the world would not know that this cultivation technique was called the Demon and God 9 transformations. The demon god gave a low, angry roar and slowly raised its giant sword. The black aura in the surroundings all gathered towards the giant sword blade dragon, finally turning into flames that soared into the sky. Chu Tian could not maintain this state for long. Therefore, he gathered all of them together to decide victory. The solidified crystals on the Lich Dragon's body began to boil again and the flames engulfed its body, making it look like it had doubled in size. It looked like it was a dark phoenix that came out of the underworld, directly using its burning body to release an earth-shattering attack. The demon god raised its giant sword glow and slammed it down on the dark phoenix's body. The energy released this time created a shockwave that created quite a large storm for several dozen kilometers. "Break for me!" The god-demon sword's destructive power and boundless deathly energy fused together, instantly exploding forth with astonishing power. The god-demon sword sliced through the black phoenix's head, and by the time the blade came out from its tail, the god-demon sword had reached its limit and exploded. Chu Tian was sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. There were injuries all over his body, and whether it was his mind or strength, he would need at least 10-15 days of rest to recover. But it didn't matter. The Lich Dragon was cut in half and all of its energy disappeared. The dragon skeleton that was pieced together by the secret death technique fell apart and large amounts of fragments covered several miles. The death energy in the death basin completely disappeared. Everything returned to normal in a short period of time. It's over? It's all over? This shocking battle made those who saw it unable to recover for a long time. The little fox was wildly swallowing the death energy in the basin and cleaning up the aftermath. After around 2 hours, the Green City army rushed over. When they saw the mess in the basin, they were all stunned. This was a battle that changed the landscape. This level of battle was something even peak true spirit cultivators could not do. Finally, Chu Tian, who couldn't move, was carried out. Although the side effects were large, Chu Tian's consciousness was still clear. He did not waste words and just ordered Clark, "Immediately send people to seal off the basin, no one is allowed to enter." Clark did not dare underestimate Chu Tian at all. "Understood, Sir City Lord." Not long after Chu Tian was sent back to Green City, Chu Tian's bravery was known by everyone in Green City. With Chu Tian's strength alone, he had saved the entire Green City. He was the savior of the green religion and the gnomes, which created a large response in Green City. Then, everything that happened next was logical. On the third day, the Green Religion's gnome elders announced to the entire city that the acting city lord Chu Tian had officially become the sole city lord of Green City. The entire Green City had to listen to Chu Tian's orders. Although there were many twists and turns and many changes, he finally sat on the city lord's throne. The first thing Chu Tian announced was a name change. In order to welcome a new beginning for Green City and to represent Chu Tian becoming the city lord, Green City could no longer be called Green City, its name had to be changed. From today onwards, the Forest of Chaos Green City would forever become a thing of the past. This city would be renamed to Miracle City, Miracle City. This was a city in the center of the Forest of Chaos. Although it had an outstanding location, it was not a very remarkable city and it was not a very strong city. Miracle City was still a mess. This moment would inevitably be recorded in history. Chapter 871. Chief Arnold released his spirit energy and the energy turned into the shape of an incomparably strong bull. The Minotaur race's source spirit was made of different bulls and Arnold's source spirit was the Golden Barbarian Bull King. The Golden Barbarian Bull King was a very powerful demon beast. This source spirit not only increased strength, defense, and explosive power, the most important thing was that the Golden Barbarian Bull King was a dual-attributed demon beast. Not only did it have an earth-attributed attack and defense, it also had a rare spiritual energy. In the legends, the Golden Barbarian Bull King used its gaze to kill its prey. This ability was called the Death Gaze. Of course, in essence, this was a very strong spiritual attack. Arnold's source spirit was the Golden Barbarian Bull King, so he had the Golden Barbarian Bull King's innate talent. It was a pity that spiritual attacks were useless against undead. This kind of monster could only be completely crushed and completely destroyed. When Arnold gave the order, several hundred elite Minotaur clansmen released their source spirits at the same time. They were all incomparably strong bulls and their source spirits covered their bodies, making the Minotaurs look like several hundred giant bulls digging the ground. That low roar that shook the forest immediately spread across the entire forest. Several hundred of them wildly charged forward. The earth shook and the forest trembled. The Minotaurs used their powerful bodies to charge forward. Wherever they went, everything was destroyed. Whether it was trees or rocks, they were all smashed apart. They were very fast and the zombies and ghouls in front of them did not have time to react. They could only see several hundred different colored bulls charging forward like several hundred shockwaves, creating a large ditch in the forest. Their bones were shattered and their bodies were torn apart. These zombies and ghouls were as weak as paper in front of the Minotaurs. They were sent flying or trampled one by one. The Minotaur's powerful charge was displayed without a doubt at this moment. Chu Tian was very shocked. These bulls actually have this kind of strength? Although Arnold doesn't have any brains, his battle strength is not bad. Dolores had to admit this point. The Minotaur's charge created a large impact, and the undead army's main force quickly focused their attention here. There were at least 20-30 necromancers riding gargoyles and several dozen gargoyles, blocking the charging Minotaurs. The Minotaurs were strong, but they were still made of flesh and blood. No matter how strong the necromancers' bodies were, they would still turn into a pile of rotten meat in an instant. But when the necromancers condensed all kinds of undead techniques to attack, Clark and several gnome priests riding hippogriffs flew over. The necromancers could only send the attacks they were prepared for the Minotaurs at the Green Religion priests. The gnomes' power came from the forest god. This was a kind of pure life energy. It was the complete opposite of the undead religion's energy. Clark and the others had already prepared several layers of defenses on their bodies, making them low-key from the necromancers' attacks. Overconfident gnomes. Kill them. The gnomes and the necromancers began to fight in the air. The gnomes' hippogriffs could not defeat the gargoyles, not to mention the gargoyles had the advantage in numbers. Both sides had just exchanged a few moves before the gnomes fell into a disadvantage. The necromancer priest sent a petrifying beam at the gnomes' hippogriffs. That strong curse power instantly turned living creatures into statues. The gnomes quickly jumped off their mounts and shot a green arrow into the air. The gargoyles flapped their wings and the life energy arrow was sent flying. Go die. The gargoyles the necromancer priest was sitting on turned into a purple and black shadow as they charged forward. When they were about to smash the gnome's head to pieces, a crow suddenly came out of nowhere and entered the necromancer priest's chest. The necromancer priest shouted out in fear, "Shaman witchcraft!" The sound of flesh being torn apart rang out. Countless crows came out of the necromancer priest's chest and mouth, instantly turning the necromancer into minced meat. It turned out that the shaman sorcerer was riding a bat into the battle. The shaman witchcraft was basically useless against the undead, but for the necromancer controlling the gargoyles, it was a very dangerous power. A necromancer priest angrily roared, "That trash Mars really can't do anything right, he actually has this many traitors under him." Luz was riding on the back of a giant witchcraft bat. Without saying a single word, he suddenly released a large amount of colorful poisonous insects that were like a rainbow-colored cloud, quickly filling the surroundings. These were the witchcraft techniques of the shaman sorcerers. Although the gargoyles were not afraid, the necromancers were living people and they were clear on the shaman's methods. This kind of ability was hard to defend against, so they did not dare approach. The gnome used arrows to shoot down the gargoyles one by one. At this time, the battle in the forest had entered an intense stage. The undead army had clearly been refined recently. This was because they were locals that lived in this area, and because they were polluted by large amounts of death energy, they became undead. These undead were not much stronger than when they were alive, and they did not have any intelligence. It was impossible for the cultivation techniques and martial skills they had when they were alive to be preserved. With just the normal zombies and ghouls, they could not stop the Green City army. But at this time, 5 abominations charged in front. These 5 abominations could not compare to the one they killed in Green City yesterday. But they were all around the 4th true spirit layer. Now that there were 5 of them, it was a very large scene. The necromancers controlled large amounts of gargoyles, ghouls, and zombies. They were all centered around the 5 abominations, forming 5 battle groups. This was because the abominations could release a highly poisonous death mist. This poison mist was very lethal to living beings, but it did no harm to the undead hiding in the poison mist. This made it much harder to deal with them. Dolores knit her brows. "Demonic god followers, it's time for us to make a move." Several hundred demonic god summoners began to use their summoning techniques, and several hundred spiritual demon beasts appeared in front of them. Although the spiritual demon beasts' abilities were greatly weakened, they were not afraid of normal attacks. Therefore, they could charge to the front and were not afraid of the poison mist. There weren't enough summoners. Perhaps they couldn't stop them for long. When the battle was in full swing, there was another change. There was an explosion coming from the distance and large amounts of dark red clouds that were like a sticky substance poured into the sky. An incomparably large source energy array appeared in the sky. The source energy array was very large. It almost covered the entire sky. This is bad. The Lich was speeding up, most likely wanting to complete the ceremony ahead of time. This source energy array was not at its peak, but with its current strength, it was more than enough to destroy Green City. This is bad. There are too many undead in front of us. With the abominations guarding them, our main force can't charge through. The dark red clouds spread out in the sky like a tide, and some of them were heading towards the forest where the battle was taking place. Everyone could feel the terrifying energy contained in the dark clouds, but they could only watch as it approached. A large sound rang out. A bolt of black lightning fell from the clouds. The thunderbolts struck the spiritual beasts, and with a single strike, dozens of spiritual beasts were annihilated. This was just the beginning. More and more black thunderbolts continued to fall, and each of them contained an extremely strong power of death. If they struck a living being, they would instantly turn that living being into an undead spirit. If they struck an undead creature, it would be as if they were injected with stimulants, causing their strength to skyrocket. Dolores's expression became uglier and uglier. This is bad, we'll most likely lose if we keep fighting like this. Chu Tian shook his head and said, "It's really useless, let me do it." "Fox, I'll watch you first." The little fox jumped out and turned into a mass of gray mist, appearing several hundred meters in the air. Then it teleported several times and instantly charged into the dark clouds that covered their heads. The little fox's snow-white body was negligible in front of the giant energy cloud. But with just a gentle breath, it created the effect of all rivers flowing into the sea, causing the incomparably dense energy cloud to change shape. All of it surged towards the little fox's body, and the lightning of death that was gathering in the dark clouds instantly disappeared. Chu Tian used the void escaping to charge through the undead. Large amounts of gargoyles and ghouls surrounded him, but it was useless against Chu Tian. 18 figures followed behind Chu Tian, and their speed was not any slower than Chu Tian's. The 18 divine blood-in corpses were covered in a glow, just like 18 dark golden bronze statues. A palm shot out. The gargoyles were shattered to pieces. The low-level undead couldn't even take a single blow. Even if they crawled around the divine blood-in corpses like ants, as long as the divine blood-in corpses released light, it would cover all the undead within several dozen meters. Finally, they would be torn to pieces by the vast energy released by the divine blood-in corpses. The divine blood-in corpses' steps were incomparably steady, not changing at all. They weren't affected by these attacks at all. Chu Tian was very satisfied with the divine blood-in corpses' power. This was a good chance to show it off. He could test just how strong these fellows were. Chu Tian gave an order to the divine blood-in corpses. He left 3 divine blood-in corpses as guards and split the other 15 divine blood-in corpses into 5 groups of 3. They all had the same goal, the abomination. Chu Tian wanted to control these divine blood-in corpses and destroy the abominations surrounded by tens of thousands of undead. This was an almost impossible matter. The abomination was a very powerful undead monster, and there were large amounts of ghouls and gargoyles protecting it, so how could 3 divine blood-in corpses approach it? Chu Tian had a lot of confidence in the divine blood-in corpses. Chapter 872. There were too many messes in Miracle City. Although the internal dangers had been temporarily solved, the external threats were still very serious. The famine caused by the shamans had not been solved yet, the undead had polluted the southern forests, and Miracle City's environment was very special. Because they were too weak at this moment, it was hard to avoid conflicts with the surrounding large powers. Adding in the fact that the ruler had changed, the top and bottom needed to work together, so they were in a period of chaos. The merchants in the city had all left, and Miracle City had basically lost their source of income. Dolores had been reporting to Chu Tian's sickbed for an entire hour, and she still hadn't finished. Enough, don't say any more. Chu Tian sat up. Although he had recovered after 5-6 days in bed, Chu Tian was still in a weak state. I will find helpers to clean up this mess. You don't need to report everything to me. Where's Clark? Quickly call him over. Dolores was speechless. How could there be a city lord like this? Clark came to the city lord's castle and immediately cupped his hands to Chu Tian as he said, reporting to the city lord, as expected, the basin is connected to a deep underground space. It is filled with the skeletons of various ancient creatures and there are countless undead monsters wandering around. However, we still don't know why there is such a strong death energy. Because the environment inside is too dangerous, the scouts don't dare charge in. Chu Tian rubbed his chin in thought. He thought of a possibility, but he couldn't confirm it for now. Don't worry about it for now, I'll find time to personally take a look. Clark came over with a black crystal in his hand. When we were cleaning up the Lich Dragon's remains, we found this in the Lich Dragon's skull. This seems to be the Lich's soul flame. Should we destroy it? The Lich used a secret technique to seal its soul flame in order to resist the little fox's swallowing ability. It was because of this that the soul flame wasn't destroyed in the end. Chu Tian took the crystal in his hand. A 2,000-year-old Lich's soul flame, this is quite a precious thing. It would be a pity to destroy it, I have other uses for it. The soul flame was the heart and the brain of an undead. Most of an undead's power was sealed in the soul flame and the memories and thoughts of an intelligent undead came from the soul flame fluctuations. Therefore, for an undead, the soul flame was an important part of them. They could abandon any part of their body, but the soul flame was something they couldn't lack. This Lich's soul flame was damaged and the Lich's consciousness should have been completely scattered. This damaged soul flame was like a brain that had been turned into a vegetable. Although it had lost its ability to think, Chu Tian believed that if it was stimulated properly, this soul flame would still be able to continue burning. This was not important at all. Chu Tian asked the question he was most concerned about. The matter I wanted you to do, how is it going? Although spatial attributed crystals are rare, the gnomes have some in stock. We have already completed the work according to the blueprints and methods the city lord provided. Clark hesitated before asking, spatial attributed materials are rare, but there aren't many places where they can be used. We don't know why the city lord wants to make that strange tower. There weren't many places where spatial attributed materials could be used. It was mainly in the creation of storage equipment. The research on spatial energy in this era was too limited, but even so, spatial attributed materials were still an expensive and rare material. Chu Tian had given Clark a blueprint 3 days ago and had Clark bring the gnomes to complete the things on the blueprint. This time, he had used most of the spatial attributed materials in Green City stock, which made the gnomes feel very pained. No rush. Chu Tian heard that it was finished and his mood immediately became good. Come, I'll bring you to have a look. In a small valley in the center of Miracle City, there was a 4-meter-tall spire being built. There was a giant disc beside the spire that was embedded with large amounts of spatial attributed crystals. Chu Tian carefully inspected it and finally made sure that there were no mistakes before carefully taking out the eye of the star. The eye of the star had been carefully polished and it was only 2/3 of its original size. When the eye of the star was placed in the center of the spire, it immediately connected to the spire. An energy quickly filled the spire and disc, instantly activating this strange thing. A starlight was released from the top of the spire and the aura of spatial energy filled the surroundings. The gnomes were a bit stunned. Spatial energy was one of the most mysterious and elusive energies in the world, but Chu Tian could use a stable and orderly method to form it. This should be enough. Chu Tian took out the communication device to contact Oldman's small town. The people on the other side had clearly been waiting for a long time. Chu Tian did not waste words and directly said, "You can come over now." Chu Tian hung up the communication device and turned around to make a retreating gesture. No one knew what Chu Tian was doing, but he wouldn't do something meaningless. Clark and Dolores had personally seen Chu Tian place the eye of the star in the spire, so they remembered how much importance Chu Tian placed on the eye of the star. This also meant that the spire did not have a normal ability. At this time, the spire suddenly lit up. The spatial crystals began to release energy. Everyone felt like the ground was being affected by some kind of energy as it began to slightly tremble. There was a dazzling flash and on the disc beside the spire, large amounts of human figures appeared. "Chu Tian, Before the light disappeared, a surprised and excited voice sounded in Chu Tian's ears. There was a soft and boneless body that jumped into his embrace, giving him a large hug. If it wasn't Yingying, who else could it be? Chu Tian picked up Yingying. How is it? I didn't lie to you, right? It really is mysterious. Meng Yingying's face turned a bit red and she immediately left his embrace. How did you do it? We were clearly in Oldman small town, but when we opened the scroll, we were instantly brought here. This is the effect of the transport tower. Chu Tian proudly looked at his work and said, Miracle City has the first transport tower on the continent. Whether it is the ends of the earth or any corner of the world, as long as you use the spatial transportation technology, you can instantly come to our Miracle City. The scroll I used the space warehouse to give you was actually made from the eye of the star fragment and spatial crystal powder. It has the spatial coordinates of Miracle City's transport tower recorded on it, so it can complete a group transport. It wasn't just Meng Yingying that was sent over this time. Meng Qingwu, Nangong Yun, Chen Bingyu, Vivian, and most of Miracle Commerce's main members had all arrived. Ha ha, young miss, Vivian, Nangong, long time no see. Chu Tian found several small abysses. Lulu, you're here too? That's great. The little flower fairy Lulu had brought her sisters here. Her face was filled with surprise at this moment. Meng Qingwu, Nangong Yun, and Chen Bingyu didn't react at all. They couldn't understand no matter how they thought about it. They had been in Oldman small town a moment ago, but they had suddenly come to Miracle City in the blink of an eye. The two places were separated by tens of thousands of miles. They actually crossed it in the blink of an eye. This was simply like a miracle. The most shocked one was Vivian. Vivian herself was a spatial talent. Her maximum teleportation distance was not more than a few hundred miles, because the further the distance, the harder it was to lock onto space. She had never heard of anyone in this world who could cross a distance of tens of thousands of miles in one go. I know you have many questions you want to ask, but now is not the time. Let me introduce you. Chu Tian turned to the people who were like blocks of wood and said, This is the gnome's great elder Clark. This is the Fox clan's demonic god priest Dolores, and this is... Clark's face was filled with excitement. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. Then who are these people? This beautiful and noble human young miss with both beauty and intelligence is Miracle Commerce's vice chairman and Miracle City's vice city lord. Chu Tian then pointed at the petite Vivian on the side and said, This elven young miss has an even bigger background. She is the Eternal Forest's Elven King's daughter Vivian and will be Miracle City's vice city lord from now on. Meng Qingwu and Vivian were the two vice city lords appointed by the Elven King. Clark didn't know who Meng Qingwu was, but he had heard of Vivian before. This was the Elven King's most talented daughter and he felt it was very strange at the time. Why didn't the Elven King directly give his daughter the position of City Lord and instead gave a nameless human such an important position? Vivian wasn't considered strong right now, but she was still stronger than this human, right? Not to mention that she was the Elven King's daughter. If Vivian was in the city, the other powers would have to think twice before making a move against her and whether they could withstand the Elven King's revenge. Of course. Now Clark understood. After seeing Chu Tian's series of abilities and methods, the gnomes no longer looked down on this young but incomparably powerful human. They had full understanding and trust in the Elven King's ability to judge people. It's not convenient to talk here, let's go to the City Lord's main hall. The two sides naturally needed some time to get used to each other. Although Chu Tian had already become the City Lord, the gnomes were still the main power of Miracle City. Chu Tian would still need the gnomes' resources and manpower for a long time, so there were some things that needed to be clearly explained. At the very least, Chu Tian wanted the gnomes to know what Miracle Commerce was doing. Wah boss, it can't be. Nangong Yun shouted while riding the griffin, Our city is too big, I've never seen a city like this before. It can fit several dozen southern summer imperial cities together. Meng Yingying was also very shocked by Miracle City's scenery. Although there was still a faint undead aura in the air, it did not stop her from enjoying the beautiful scenery of the city. The surrounding mountains were natural walls and barriers, while the inside was vast and incomparably beautiful. There were plains, valleys, mountain ranges, and lakes. This was truly a rare treasure land. Too big, only there were too few people. If it wasn't for the scattered castles and settlements, everyone would have thought they had come to a paradise surrounded by mountains. Who would have thought that this was a city? Meng Qingwu was very excited. Miracle commerce had developed for over a year, and this was the first time they had an official territory. Chapter 873. The little fox's aura swallowing the mountains and rivers stopped the powerful energy cloud from spreading, completely shocking the necromancers. This energy came from the ruins, and it was incomparably pure. Unless it was an expert on the level of the Elven King, it was impossible for them to resist it. How did this little life form do this? The amount of energy that he had just absorbed was enough to create an army of undead. At this time, the divine blood-eaten corpses ran faster and faster, and the light they released became brighter and brighter. The energy flowing out of their bodies tightly wrapped around their bodies, turning them into glowing balls. With an unstoppable momentum, they directly crushed the undead monsters. That's right, it was a crushing. Even if it was just a little bit. The undead instantly exploded into powder. The divine blood-eaten corpses' charge was 10 times stronger than the Minotaurs. Even if there was an army in front of them, it would be like 10 million ants. They could just step over them. Looking down on everything. Pressing forward. The gargoyles kept sending out all kinds of curses, hoping to slow it down, but these attacks had no effect on the divine blood-eaten corpses. The loathsome evil seemed to have felt a sense of danger and immediately let out a deep roar. It awakened a powerful death energy from within its body. In the end, it quickly surged out of its body in the form of a shockwave. The energy flow that was like a tsunami overflowed in all directions. Everything in the surroundings was quickly petrified and turned into obsidian without any signs of life. It was this move again. The 3 divine blood-eaten corpses were less than 5 meters away from the attack. The energy that was like a ball of light covering the eaten corpses was like a snowball in boiling water, melting at a speed visible to the naked eye. That jet-black energy continued to erode the center of the eaten corpses. The necromancer priest let out a sigh of relief. These fellows were indeed a bit strange, but their strength didn't seem to be as strong as he had imagined. The abomination's high purity and concentration of death energy erupted in a single breath. This kind of high-speed energy flow could directly envelop and seep into everything around it, changing it from the very core, which was why it could obliterate any existence. The energy on the surface of the divine blood-eaten corpses was not strong enough, so the high-speed energy shot through this energy and landed on their bodies. Without any protection, it was impossible for them to block this kind of attack, and they would instantly turn into 3 black obsidian statues. As expected, the moment the divine blood-eaten corpses' protective energy was completely corroded, the black energy wildly sprayed on their bodies like paint. The divine blood-eaten corpses were covered in a layer of black from head to toe, and it was glossy, releasing the color of obsidian. They were killed? They were only like this. Dolores knit her brows in confusion, but while everyone was shocked and the necromancer was taunting them, she found that Chu Tian had a deep smile on his face. What followed was a shocking scene. The 3 figures that had clearly turned into black obsidian statues still moved forward, maintaining their speed. They charged at the abomination from 3 different angles, and 3 fists landed on the abomination's body at the same time. Everyone could clearly see that the black marks on the divine blood-eaten corpses were quickly fading. It wasn't fading, the energy didn't disappear, it was just leaving the body. From every corner of the body, it all went to the right arm and finally gathered in the fist. It condensed into a small piece that was sent back to the abomination's body. The 3 fists landed on the abomination's body, and the energy released instantly petrified the abomination's body before exploding. The abomination fell to the ground and a third of its body disappeared. The abomination's power did not harm the divine blood-eaten corpses. This power was absorbed by the divine blood-eaten corpses and used by the divine blood-eaten corpses to send a punch back at the abomination. This kind of attack method was unheard of. Don't think that the abomination is that easy to defeat. The necromancer priest quickly controlled the abomination. Ignorant people, I'll let you see the true power of the abomination. The abomination was an undead creature. It couldn't even be considered a normal undead creature because the abomination did not have a soul flame. It was just a mixture of flesh and energy, so it did not have any weaknesses. Even if it was cut into pieces, it would not die. Roar! The loathsome evil let out a deafening roar, and its body continued to tear apart. It quickly opened its countless mouths, and countless long things that looked like blood vessels and tentacles exploded out, like fireworks exploding in all directions. They were faster and sharper than arrows, and they stabbed into the bodies of the ghouls one by one. The ghouls let out painful howls as their originally strong bodies withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Large amounts of flesh and blood were sucked out, finally turning into a bag of bones that fell to the ground. The abomination instantly recovered large amounts of flesh and energy. The missing parts of its body were replenished, and the red tentacle-like things were still wandering around its body, stabbing into the zombie's body and devouring the surrounding zombies like they were thirsting for blood. In just a few seconds, 100 ghouls had been eaten by the abomination. The abomination looked even larger and stronger, becoming even more ferocious and terrifying. This kind of undead monster was not an existence that could be measured with common sense. It was a monster made of flesh and energy with the undead religion's secret technique. Therefore, as long as the secret technique was not broken, it could not be killed. The abomination was more tenacious than any other undead creature. Hey, how about it? The necromancer priest rode on the back of the gargoyle and looked down on them with a victorious attitude. The abomination cannot die, it can swallow all flesh and blood. As long as there are materials, it can recover at any time. Even if you have heaven-defying skills, don't think you can defeat the abomination in this kind of environment. This kind of terrifying scene did not make Chu Tian's expression change at all. He just revealed a taunting and disdainful smile as the 3 Een corpses charged at the abomination again. Seeking death. The abomination's arms split open and a black bone blade came out. It sent out 2 slashes from the left and right, and the blade glow sent the divine blood Een corpses flying. The 2 attacks were too strong, and the divine blood Een corpses did not have any protection at all. They used their flesh to block the attack and were split in half. The last divine blood Een corpse charged at the abomination. The abomination's large belly suddenly split open, and it was like a giant mouth. It was filled with rotten flesh and dense teeth, making people's scalps go numb just looking at it. The abomination did not give the divine blood Een corpses any chance to escape. The tentacles on its body shot out at the same time and tightly wrapped around the divine blood Een corpses before throwing them into its giant mouth. The large mouth closed. The belly closed. The abomination's fat belly moved, just like a large mouth chewing food. There was the sound of flesh and bone being crushed, and a person was swallowed like this, or it could be said that they were stuffed into its stomach. Moreover, with the abomination's strength, even if it was a piece of refined iron, it would still be instantly disintegrated. The necromancer priest said with a cold smile, "This kind of thing is only fit to be a snack for the abomination." Chu Tian smiled without saying a word. "I'm afraid your teeth aren't good enough. The consequences of eating something bad will be very serious." When Chu Tian spoke, the 2 Een corpses that had been split in half did not have a single drop of blood coming out. They were like 2 magnets that attracted each other and stood up again. Their clothes had already been destroyed and they were completely naked. The divine blood Een corpses had been refined for a long time, so their appearances had changed greatly. From head to toe, there were no signs of gender. There was no hair, no pores, and the dark golden skin that seemed to be cast from gold and copper was covered in dense runes. Both of his eyes were open, but there was nothing in his eye sockets, only a scarlet radiance radiating from them. What is this? Everyone was stunned by this undead that didn't seem like an undead, a living being that didn't seem like a living being. Being split in half from head to toe, the giant instantly healed. Could it be that they wouldn't die? At this moment, the loathsome evil's body began to convulse, making a sound similar to boiling water. Its originally huge and malevolent body suddenly became irregular, like a piece of wax that was rapidly melting under high temperature. Pieces of rotten flesh fell off, and the loathsome evil's body swelled up. What is going on? The necromancer priest found that he could no longer control the abomination. The abomination's body was filled with a kind of energy that was like a terrifying virus, constantly seeping into every corner of the abomination's body. It made the abomination's body lose control, so it was quickly collapsing. The abomination completely exploded. The energy in its body was released at once, which was equivalent to an explosion. Although it couldn't compare to the one in Green City, the might was still enough to cover several hundred meters. All the ghouls, gargoyles, and zombies in this area, as well as the necromancers that couldn't escape in time, were all killed. The divine blood-eaten corpses walked out of the center of the explosion. Its body was also heavily deformed, but its bones gave off a crackling sound as they quickly returned to their original position, finally returning to normal. The three divine blood-eaten corpses were not injured at all. The divine blood-eaten corpses dared to swallow them? The divine blood could break all curses and it could break death energy. Not to mention a trivial abomination, even if the bone dragon swallowed the divine blood-eaten corpses, it would still suffer. At this moment, there were explosions coming from several directions. Several abominations had already been killed. Chu Tian was very pleased with this result. It really wasn't a waste to pay such a large price. These Een corpses had almost immortal bodies. At least with the power of the true spirit realm, it would be hard to kill them. This was the power brought by the divine blood. In the ancient god's memory crystal, these puppets were called divine servants. Chapter 874. The first high-level closed-door conference was held in the City Lord's castle. The main participants this time were the high-level members of Miracle Commerce and the original Green City high-level members. Because of the change in management, most of the gnomes were no longer in important positions. From the City Lord, Vice City Lord, Finance, Military, and etc., they were all going to be replaced. This conference was mainly hosted by Meng Qingwu. This beautiful human with a noble temperament, in the next few hours, she made all the gnomes look at her in a new light. Meng Qingwu had a strong learning ability that allowed her to grasp over 20 different races' languages. She used a very fluent Elven language to communicate with Clark and the other gnomes. The talent that Meng Qingwu displayed in her speech was not something a normal scholar could have, which made the gnomes look at her in a new light. Of course, this was nothing. Meng Qingwu focused on introducing Miracle Commerce. Her thoughts were very clear, even the canned food and the electric lights were carefully explained. The source energy batteries and source energy weapons were introduced in detail, not to mention the space warehouse and transportation technology, the video and communication technology, and the currently developing spiritual virtual technology. The gnomes were not old-fashioned elves. They had a strong desire to explore and were a group of people who liked to study. Most of the gnomes considered themselves scholars. Miracle Commerce's series of grand and shocking inventions, each one was like a bomb that the gnomes couldn't recover for a while. What was called research? What was called invention? The gnomes had built one of the best underground research bases in the forest, using several hundred years to do all kinds of research, but it couldn't compare to 1/100th of the Yun sect that Chu Tian had built in a year. Although this fact made the gnomes feel helpless, it also made them incomparably excited. Although Miracle Commerce did not have a strong strength, but Miracle Commerce had an incomparably strong potential. This was a company filled with creativity. Just based on the transport tower and the space warehouse, these two things created with spatial technology as a foundation, they were enough to bring infinite possibilities to Miracle City. The Forest of Chaos had a complex environment and each city was sealed off, not to mention the outside countries. It was because of this that although the Forest of Chaos was rich in resources, it had always been in a very poor state. If the transport tower and the space warehouse could be popularized, people could be transported to people and things could be transported. How convenient would that be? This was very promising. Not to mention the source energy weapon technology. This was enough to make up for the lack of strength in the near future. I plan to merge the Yun sect and Gnomes research base. Meng Qingwu said, with the Gnomes and the Yun sect's high-level leaders, what do the elders think? The Gnomes were still in shock and had not recovered yet. Clark quickly asked, "Can we join the research of this new technology?" Meng Qingwu nodded with a faint smile. "The gnomes are famous on the continent. With you joining the Yunsek's large project, I believe the Yunsek's results will be even stronger than before." Good, good. Great. The gnomes were filled with excitement and they all agreed to join the alliance. This kind of cooperation was beneficial to Miracle Commerce and not harmful at all. They would obtain the Forest of Chaos top research equipment and talents, as well as all of Green City's resources. This was simply no different from taking a sheep for nothing. If the other powers took over Green City, they would have to pay for the gnomes' research base, but it was completely different if Miracle Commerce took over. This was purely investing in themselves. It didn't matter if they spent tens of thousands of source stones every month. Meng Qingwu never thought it would be this smooth. The gnomes did not even give her any conditions. Perhaps this was the difference between races. If it was a human sitting on the other side, they would have asked for a sky-high price and how to divide the research results. The gnomes did not have this kind of requirement, which meant that their thoughts were too simple. There weren't many races on the continent that were as greedy as humans. This was also why most races, including the gnomes, did not like interacting with humans. Now that the introductions have been made, I think everyone should have a basic understanding of each other. Chu Tian, who had not spoken since the beginning, stood up at this moment. We should properly discuss how to clean up the mess in front of us. There were several problems Miracle City faced. First, there was a lack of people. Miracle City had less than 1 million people and most of them were gnomes. There were no merchants doing business here and no one excavating the rich resources and market here. Second, there was a lack of finances. Before Chu Tian came, Miracle City was already struggling to make ends meet. Now that they had experienced several large-scale disturbances, there were many things to do, so they needed money. Miracle Commerce's several tens of thousands of source stones were not enough. They could at most quench their thirst for a while, but problems would appear soon. Third, they were weak. Miracle City was just too weak. With just a few shamans and a single lich, they actually almost overturned a forest city. This would simply make people laugh to death if they knew about it. It had to be known that as long as it was a forest city, they were all large powers that could ignore the dark forest laws. Miracle City was too weak. They didn't even have a single spirit transformation cultivator guarding it. Fourth, there was a diplomatic problem. Miracle City's background was the Eternal Forest, but everyone knew that the Eternal Forest was too closed off. Hoping for the elves to help them was better than hoping for a meat pie to fall from the sky. Although the Eternal Forest's name was a deterrent, it was hard to stop the large powers from coveting it. It was fine if it was a normal power, but they were afraid of attracting a true giant. There were many other large and small problems. These were only the most important of the many problems. Although he was the city lord of Green City, he still couldn't sleep well. The most important thing now was to solve these problems. The main plan now was to expand Miracle City's population and strength. First he had to integrate the internal strength and then he had to recruit people from the outside. Miracle City still had the shaman religion and the druid religion to recruit. The shamans led by Luz and Miracle City were basically in the same boat. As long as they had enough conditions, this power would be gradually absorbed by Chu Tian. The druids were a bit troublesome. Although the druids were strong, the druids were too arrogant and hard to tame, so they couldn't be recruited in most situations. But the druids had already seen Chu Tian's abilities and Prophet Yoda was filled with admiration for Chu Tian. As long as there was a suitable standard, it wasn't impossible to form a cooperative relationship with them. These two powers had to be digested, but it was far from enough. Miracle Commerce needed to recruit more people and elites. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu looked at the locals at the same time. The Fox tribe, the Minotaurs, and etc. These large tribes surrounded Miracle City and these tribes were quite strong, so the locals often influenced the city's governance. In the battle with the Lich this time, the locals had a much closer relationship with Miracle City. How long could this kind of relationship last? The locals almost attacked the city a while ago. This matter could happen again. Other than that, most of the locals liked to live around Miracle City. It wasn't just because it was convenient, The most important reason was that most of these fellows were forest robbers. Wherever there was a city, there would be caravans coming and going. These rich caravans naturally attracted their attention. So even if the locals maintained a good relationship with Miracle City, it was hard to stop them from causing trouble nearby. This was still a hidden danger for Miracle Commerce. Exterminate them? This wasn't realistic, and they couldn't kill them all. Win them all over? That was even more impossible. These fellows didn't have a high quality, and if they all moved into the city at once, Miracle City would be hard to manage. Not to mention that after moving a group, the locals from other places would move in and form another group. What should they do? Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu carefully discussed it and finally thought of a good method. The next day, the news of the forest spread. Miracle City's large conscription had begun. Each tribe's elite warriors could join the army, with food, lodging, and pay. The treatment was not bad, and the tribes could receive Miracle City's food allowance. They could also use the conscription rate to exchange for a place to live in Miracle City. This news caused a stir among the locals. Because of the shaman's disturbance, the famine had not recovered yet, and the lack of food was a large problem. Miracle City's conscription provided them with good food. It was not something the tribes could compare to. Not to mention that soldiers had the chance to be promoted to an official, gaining glory for the tribe, gaining allowances for the tribe, and also being able to exchange for a permanent residence in Miracle City for their family and children. This was a very good thing. Miracle City released the news. The first batch was to recruit 30,000 people. They would serve for 3 to 5 years, and whether the soldiers chose to retire or not, Miracle City would not restrict their freedom. Miracle Commerce sent out flyers to the various tribes and prepared large amounts of loudspeakers to spread the news throughout the forest. Do you want to create a future with Miracle Commerce? Do you want to break away from your monotonous life? Do you want to stand out? Do you want to earn money to support your family? Do you want to live a better life? Participate in Miracle City's large conscription right now. As long as you pass through the layers of selection, you can become a glorious Miracle City soldier. Miracle City not only provides food, lodging, and training, it also has a series of unexpected benefits, allowing you to have no worries at all. The forest was instantly filled with a stir. Where could they find this kind of treatment? Not to mention this time of famine. Even if it was just cultivating for a few years, it was still a good thing. Cultivation resources like pills and potions were all subsidized, so it was much more comfortable than staying in the tribes. Not to mention the beautiful future that Miracle City had outlined, it was possible to become a soldier. Suddenly, a wave of soldiers was set off in the forest. Countless locals who were confident in their strength all set off with their weapons. They rushed to Miracle City to show off their skills at the conscription ceremony. Miracle City's first batch of 30,000 people. But the conscription would be held every year or even every season. The conscription was not limited to the surroundings, it included places even further away. The conscription was not limited to fighting, it also included logisticians. If one was skilled in forging, gathering, or mining, they could also participate. This did not just guarantee that Miracle Commerce would have enough soldiers in the future. It was equal to creating several tens of thousands of jobs and adding several 100,000 jobs in the future. This was enough to greatly improve the lives of the tribes, and it could unite the surrounding tribes, increasing Miracle Commerce's population. Of course, the disadvantages were very obvious. Raising soldiers was not a small expense. Miracle Commerce did not just need to provide food, they also needed to provide cultivation resources for the soldiers. Even if an elite soldier used a low-grade source stone every month, the 30,000 soldiers would have 30,000 low-grade source stones. This was already catching up to the Gnome Research Base's budget. This kind of expenditure was hard for most forest cities to bear, and it was because of this that it was hard to find a regular army in the forest. The defenses of each city were the power of the ruling tribe, living a normal life, but when there was trouble, the entire population would become soldiers. Miracle City was the first city to industrialize, regularize, and professionalize the military. Chapter 875. Under the little fox's wild swallowing, the energy cloud gradually disappeared. The little fox immediately came back after completing its task, and the 18 divine servants also came back. The necromancer's face turned very ugly. This was truly strange. The undead army created by the undead ruins and the energy released by the undead ruins was enough to crush Green City. Who would have thought that the undead religion would be the one becoming weaker and weaker? What was going on? It was completely out of his expectations. The 5 abominations were directly killed. The energy cloud was disintegrated before it even had a chance to show its effects. Under the wild attacks of the forest army's elites, the undead monsters began to show signs of being pushed back. They didn't hope to destroy the other side, they just hoped to stop them here and give Sir Lich enough time to complete the ceremony. Once this shocking array was activated, Green City would be instantly destroyed and the millions of people would turn into undead. No matter how the other side struggled, it would all be futile. Now the large net covering the sky was becoming larger and larger, gathering more and more energy, but this array was too large. Even if it continued like this, it would take less than half a day to complete. What could the undead army use to block it? Just relying on these tens of thousands of ghouls and zombies? We can't waste time here. Chu Tian knew that the Lich was completing the ceremony ahead of time and this place was quite far from the valley, so he didn't have time to waste here. He loudly shouted to the others, "We'll kill our way over and kill that Lich." Alright, kill our way over. Although their losses weren't small, everyone became braver as they fought. After all, this concerned the fate of the entire clan, so no one could afford to lose this battle. Chu Tian led the 18 divine servants in the lead, relying on the void escaping to protect himself. Even if he passed through an army of thousands, it would be hard for him to receive any damage. The 18 divine servants followed behind him. These puppets had shocking defenses, being immune to curses, death energy, and dark energy attacks, so they were unobstructed the entire way. Of course, the little fox's role was the most important. It could swallow the attacks coming from all directions. When large groups of undead surrounded them, the little fox just needed to gently suck them in. Whether it was the gargoyles, ghouls, or other high-level undead, the soul flames of the undead monsters would be sucked out. The little fox's special ability was simply an instant kill to them. One person, one fox, and 18 puppets. They passed through tens of thousands of undead, falling to the ground wherever they went. There were so many necromancers surrounding them, but they couldn't do anything to them. Chu Tian's strength alone was enough to suppress most of the undead. How could the Green City people not be shocked? How could the undead religion not be shocked? Everyone had no choice but to be convinced by Chu Tian. If this human didn't interfere, perhaps Green City wouldn't even need to wait for the undead religion to make a move. The shamans would have destroyed Green City first, and the undead religion would have been like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, Green City would not have a good ending no matter what. In the end, this person had broken the shaman's plan. Now he was attacking the undead religion like this. The undead couldn't hold on any longer. But at this moment, the scales of victory began to tilt. From the direction of the basin, there was a dense mass of black figures, which were tens of thousands of Een spirits. Each one had a fierce appearance and green fangs. They were the fiercest of the Een spirits, being made of strong death energy. They had form but no substance, and there were a large number of them. The Een souls let out sharp howls, and their bodies began to turn red. They fell down from the sky like meteors, and the already withered and dead forest immediately exploded into hundreds and thousands of holes. This was an indiscriminate bombardment. Whether it was the undead army or the forest army, they were all in the range of the specter bombs. The specter bombs did not release flames or normal shockwaves, rather it released a strong death energy and spiritual energy. This attack did little damage to the undead army, but it was very harmful to normal beings. This wave of explosions did not end. Another large group of gargoyles appeared in the sky. Each of these gargoyles was carrying a warrior covered in black armor and energy. When Chu Tian saw the appearance of these warriors, his expression changed slightly. Dread Knights? The Lich really did have some skills. He could even make these kinds of things. There weren't many Dread Knights, but there were still several hundred of them. Don't look down on several hundred dread knights. Their battle strength was very terrifying. If Chu Tian's guesses weren't wrong, these dread knights were collected by the Lich from the forest and were made from the corpses of the old chiefs of the large tribes. Those old chiefs that died of old age or accidents all had very high strength. When they were turned into dread knights, they could recover most of their strength from when they were alive, and they could even keep a part of their cultivation technique from when they were alive. The black heavy armor on the bodies of these high-level undead wasn't real armor, but was condensed from dark energy. The appearance of these undead basically retained the appearance of when they were alive, but their eyes were spewing soul flames, and their whole body was wrapped in a dark undead aura. Around 400-500 dread knights joined the battle. This was a very strong battle strength. Although a single dread knight could not compare to an abomination, 4-5 of them together were stronger than a single abomination. Now that there were several hundred dread knights joining the battle, this was equivalent to adding in the battle strength of over 100 abominations. This would immediately put a large pressure on Green City. A dread knight raised its large sword and quickly attacked. If he didn't use the Netherworld Flame Sword, Chu Tian would barely be able to keep up. The large sword was covered in black energy, and it could instantly send out over 20 sword glows, all attacking different parts of Chu Tian's body. The dread knights were not just fast, their attacks were also very strong. With Chu Tian's void escaping, he could not block them, so he could only retreat. A sword chi swept out, and the dread knight raised its sword to block the Netherworld sword chi. It only retreated a few steps before stabilizing itself and chasing after Chu Tian like a shadow. The little fox did not give it a chance this time. The soul flame in the dread knight's helmet floated a few times and leaked out of the gaps in the armor before being swallowed by the little fox. Chu Tian let out a slight sigh of relief. He was not afraid of the dread knights, but these fellows were too strong. If they fought, it would be endless, and Chu Tian did not have time to waste here. The forest army had not recovered from the barrage of attacks when the dread knights launched a round of attacks. This time the Green City and the forest locals were caught off guard and suffered heavy losses. The necromancers were overjoyed seeing this. The dread knights were the personal guards refined by Sir Lich. Sir Lich must have felt that the situation here was bad, so he sent his personal guards over. With the help of the dread knights, they could slightly reduce the pressure. This was bad. They didn't have enough troops. They hadn't even reached the valley yet. Clark revealed an anxious expression. It would be bad for Green City if they kept fighting like this, but when Clark was filled with anxiety, there was a sudden situation. Look. There's a group of demon beasts coming. In the sky above Green City, there was a large group of demon beasts that covered the sky. There were dragon hawks, twin-legged wyverns, thunderbirds, and all kinds of demon beasts. There was a total of 2,000-3,000 of them. Druids. The druids are here. These magic beasts were transformed from druids. The druids directly attacked the undead army. These powerful magic beasts had terrifying destructive power, and under this round of crazy attacks, the undead army that had just turned the situation around instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. The little fox continued to jump through the dread knights. In just 5-6 minutes, several dozen dread knights had been eliminated in the forest. The druids had always been neutral. At this critical moment, they had helped Green City resolve this crisis. However, Chu Tian was not surprised by this at all. The undead religion was not targeting a city or a clan. They wanted to turn the entire area into an undead land. The druids had lived in Green City for many years. How could they tolerate this kind of thing happening? This was why they decided to help Green City. Roar! A deep dragon roar came from the sky. A green dragon that was more than 10 meters long swooped down from the sky. Scorching dragon breath sprayed out, turning the ground into a sea of fire wherever it passed. Hundreds of undead monsters were burned to ashes by the terrifying dragon breath. Prophet Yoda. Prophet Yoda had made a move. This was something that had never been seen before. We are here to help Sir City Lord. After the green dragon fiercely cleaned up the undead monsters, it landed beside Chu Tian. It lowered its giant dragon head and a deep voice came from its mouth. Let me give you a ride. Haha, then I'll have to trouble you. Chu Tian brought the little fox and the divine servant to stand on the green dragon's back. He forcefully waved his hand. Green citizens, follow this city lord to kill. Long live the city lord! Long live the city lord! At this moment, the other druids also brought a lot of elites. This group of people shouted as they flew through the vast forest towards the axis of the evil energy at an extremely fast speed. When they looked into the distance, they could vaguely see the basin in front of them. The entire basin was like a huge basin, filled with dense dark energy and death energy. A huge pillar of energy pierced through the clouds, as if it wanted to stir up the entire sky. It was constantly transporting the energy contained in the earth to the sky, where it was distributed to the huge formation. Chu Tian was puzzled. Wasn't the energy in this ruin a little too strong? What kind of messy things were buried in it? Chapter 876. Miracle City's recruitment was in full swing. Whether it was the minotaurs, ogres, gnomes, or goblins, they all came to Miracle City to show off their skills. Who told Miracle City to treat them too well? It was only the registration period, but there were around 30–40,000 people participating. The official selection would begin in 3 days, so it would be packed with people at that time. Miracle Commerce had already prepared the venue. Dolores was the city lord's assistant as well as Miracle City's chief financial officer, so she already understood Miracle City's financial situation. Although Miracle Commerce was considered rich, with this kind of spending, there would be problems in less than 2 months. At that time, not only would Miracle Commerce suffer heavy losses, wouldn't the new city lord's credibility fall? How was this a recruitment? This was simply asking for her old life. Dolores quickly went to find Chu Tian, but when she entered the city lord's office, she didn't even see Chu Tian's shadow. There was only Meng Qingwu sitting there reading documents. Are you looking for Sir City Lord? Meng Qingwu looked up at Dolores. What a coincidence. He brought Yingying, Nangong, and Vivian to build the venue and prepare for the recruitment ceremony. I'm afraid he won't be back for a few days. Dolores had a depressed expression. I'll go find him directly. Don't worry, sit down and drink some tea first. It's useless for you to find him, I'm in charge of everything in the city. Meng Qingwu revealed a faint smile. Meeting a hands-off shopkeeper like Chu Tian, she didn't know if she should be happy or depressed. I know what you're worried about, but relax, there won't be any problems. How did Chu Tian attract another beautiful silver-haired fox girl? When Meng Qingwu saw Dolores, she couldn't help feeling a bit depressed. However, she wouldn't be as obvious as Meng Yingying. Moreover, Meng Qingwu was a very rational person, so she was quite satisfied with Dolores. At the very least, she was more hardworking than Nangong and Yingying. With this assistant to the city lord, Meng Qingwu's work would be much easier. You're new and don't understand us, so it's hard to avoid having doubts. She stood up and poured a cup of tea for Dolores. I won't hide it from you, I was also like this in the beginning. But you'll soon find that these worries are unnecessary. The things that Miracle Commerce can do far surpass your imagination. That fellow Chu Tian looks like he's not serious at all, but he often makes rash decisions, so he always has his reasons. Thank you. Dolores squeezed out a smile on her enchanting face. She held a cup of elven green tea. I just feel that conscription is not worth it, the price and return are not proportional. This kind of high treatment will only add a large burden and hidden danger to Miracle City. You're looking down on Chu Tian too much. Meng Qingwu revealed a dangerous smile that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring wind. This human beauty in front of Dolores was like the calm surface of the sea. Although there were no waves on the surface, the water was actually very deep. She was not a reckless person. Her confidence and calmness could infect the people around her. Do you think he only needs an army? These several tens of thousands of people are not just an army, they are also several tens of thousands of laborers. You should know Miracle Commerce's abilities. With the space warehouse and the transport tower, we can easily establish trade relations with any city, any country, and any race. We can mine resources from any place in the world and we can develop trade with any power. From a long-term perspective, what does recruiting this bit of army count for? Dolores was a bit stunned. Miracle Commerce is an outsider without a foundation. Although the gnomes are a reliable race, they are not of the same race. This means that our rule is different from other cities. Our foundation is weak, we don't have the power of the clan, and we don't have the ability to resist risks and sudden changes. So, creating a regular army is a necessity. Whether it is in the long term or the short term, this is a necessary step. To truly control Miracle City, we must first have the power of a ruler. What do you think? Dolores felt that it was reasonable from her imagination. Then the finances. I have something to tell you. I know that Chu Tian has already made you the chief financial officer of the city, so I am prepared to create a business department. You will be the business manager in the future. Meng Qingwu seemed like she had already prepared something. I hope that all the capable and talented people of the Fox clan will join this department and create a large number of merchant caravans. Your Fox clan are natural-born merchants. I believe that you will have the ability to do well. Dolores excitedly stood up. This was definitely a good thing for the Fox clan. The Fox clan were naturally smart and they were very sensitive to money and benefits. Miracle City using the smart Fox clan to manage the merchant caravans was like using steel on a blade's edge, and the Fox clan could greatly benefit from this. Alright, Dolores said without even thinking, I'll immediately do it. The Heaven's Net airship signal has already covered the surrounding 10,000 miles. The first task I'll give you is to spread the communication, broadcasting, and cinemas, covering all the cities and tribes. Not only does this have a high business value, it can also increase Miracle Commerce's influence and build a foundation for our future strategy. These technologies all had a large value waiting to be excavated. How could Dolores not know this? Now that Miracle Commerce was already moving to Miracle City, the space warehouse had sent over large amounts of communication devices, magnetic sound devices, and video players. There were several 100,000 of them in Miracle City, so the caravan's first task was to sell these things. Did they even need to sell these things? Perhaps they would all be sold out as soon as they were taken out. The Fox clan's task was not to sell out these goods, but rather to create more value. This was not just a direct value, but also a long-term value. For example, the broadcasting. Once this thing was placed in a tribe, Miracle Commerce's broadcasting station could be heard by them at all times. Any requests or announcements from Miracle Commerce could be spread across the forest as fast as possible. Meng Qingwu said, You don't need to worry too much, everything is under control now. Miracle City is still very poor and weak, but I believe that in the near future, Miracle City will become a rich and powerful city. Dolores was also very confident in this. The manager of this city was a special company like Miracle Commerce. After a few days, the preparations were finished and the conscription ceremony officially began. This large group of forest warriors arrived in front of a large arena. This arena was temporarily built by Miracle Commerce from a castle, and it was now the location for the conscription screening. Miracle City's conscription was divided into several stages. The first stage was the simplest. It was purely a competition of martial strength, allowing the participants to compete and be selected based on merit. The forest warriors began to whisper. Casualties were unavoidable in this competition. The space of this temporary arena was too small. If so many people participated in the competition, it wouldn't even take half a day for the entire arena to be torn down. There was a large screen hanging in the arena. A red-haired girl appeared on the screen. Warriors of the forest, thank you for supporting Miracle Commerce. Miracle Commerce's conscription competition is about to begin. You are very lucky, very lucky, because you will be the first people to experience the virtual arena. Virtual arena? What was called the virtual arena? That fiery red-haired girl explained. This virtual arena is a product created by our Miracle Commerce's spiritual technology, allowing everyone to fight in the spiritual space. Not only will they be able to display their full strength, what is even more precious is that there will be no injuries or deaths in the virtual arena. Every warrior will be able to display everything they have learned without any worries. The faces of the forest warriors all changed. Was this an arena created by a spiritual illusion? People in this kind of environment, Of course they wouldn't be injured or bleed. Other than that, I'll give everyone a bit of inside information. Nangong Yun announced an exciting piece of news. Miracle Commerce plans to build a large number of virtual arenas in the Forest of Chaos. In the future, there will be large amounts of competitions with large prizes. I believe that the virtual arena will become one of the most popular entertainment projects in Miracle City and the Forest of Chaos. After the spiritual network is built in the future, people from all over the world will be able to participate in Miracle Commerce's peak competitions, creating millions of professional competitions. Everyone just wait and see. Everyone instantly went into an uproar. This was just too crazy. There were no entertainment projects in this era. If the virtual arena was promoted on a large scale, they could create virtual spectator seats or connect image transfer mirrors to live broadcast. This would become a kind of entertainment project for the masses. This was a very popular thing in a martial world. Not only would it bring in large amounts of professional competitors of different cultivation realms, it would also bring in the gambling industry. Everyone line up and don't be chaotic. Listen to the staff. The forest warriors excitedly walked into the arena. The virtual arena was no different from a normal arena. It was divided into several large areas. There was a field in the middle of each area and it was surrounded by layers of terraced stands. But everyone found a problem. There was a giant crystal embedded in the center of the arena. With this crystal releasing spiritual energy as the center, there was a giant source energy array covering the entire field. In the corners of the field, there were giant energy pillars and everyone could feel the energy fluctuations coming from under their feet. Everyone sit down. The virtual arena is about to open. Everyone relax and don't resist, this is completely harmless. After several thousand people filled the field, the surrounding energy pillars lit up and the entire source energy array lit up, finally connecting to the giant spiritual energy crystal in the center. Almost in the next instant, spiritual energy was released, instantly covering everyone sitting in the large source energy array. The forest warriors were slightly stunned. When the forest warriors came back to their senses, they were shocked to find that they had appeared in a completely new place. None of their companions were missing, they had all been moved here. A majestic arena appeared in front of them. The area here was more than 10 times larger than before and it was very dazzling. This group of country bumpkins had their eyes opened wide. This was too incredible. Coming to Miracle City this time was really worth it. Even if they couldn't join the army, it was worth it to see this kind of scene. Chapter 877. The Lich floated on top of the cone-shaped altar. This altar was still continuously sending out energy, which was then distributed to the surrounding towers of undead souls. The towers of undead souls then completed the arrangement of the undead soul formation, allowing the energy to be continuously sent into the sky, converging into one, and finally pouring into the dome, forming an astonishingly powerful formation. The undead army had already been completely defeated. Chu Tian brought Yoda, Clark, Arnold, Dolores, and the others as well as thousands of elites. They had already surrounded the altar at this moment. "Stop," Clark said to the lich that floated in the air like a ghost. "You've already lost." "Lost? Now you're talking about winning and losing and you're carrying me away." The lich looked down at everyone, standing in the air with his cloak fluttering in the wind. A pair of eyes burning with blue flames revealed a cold and silent gaze. Although the lich did not have eyes, Chu Tian could feel the other side looking at him. "I have never seen a human like you before. You praise me too much, you praise me too much. I have never seen a lich like you before." Chu Tian revealed a grin. "Although you've caused a lot of trouble, this city lord can still give you a chance. Stop the ceremony right now and stop the undead army. If you surrender to me, I won't destroy you." The lich did not have any emotions. Even if Chu Tian cursed at him, he would not feel any anger, so Chu Tian did not care about his words at all. "If you perform well, I can make a body for you to reincarnate in the future." "Reincarnate?" The lich indifferently said, "I'm not interested." If it was a normal lich, this would be an irresistible temptation because after becoming a lich, One would gradually lose their humanity and finally lose the feeling of being alive. The Lich would use all kinds of methods to find themselves before they became numb. Returning to being a living being was the best choice, but this was something that was impossible to do. It was not easy for a living being to turn into an undead. It was harder than ascending to the heavens for a dead being to turn into a living being. The Lich did not believe Chu Tian and did not believe that anyone in this world could do it. Not to mention that he had already lived for 2,000 years and his personality had already been frozen, not having the slightest fluctuation, so he did not care about life or death. He did not fear destruction and did not yearn for new life. This was the reason why Chu Tian hated the Lich. Everyone thought that becoming a Lich would allow them to live forever. Actually, after reaching this state, what difference was there from dying? Eternal life? How could it be that easy to live forever in this world? What's the use of telling it this? Clark looked at the energy that was becoming stronger and he became a bit anxious. If we let this Lich stall for time to complete the ceremony, then the consequences will be irreversible. A Lich that had lived for 2,000 years. This was like a living fossil, and anyone that could become a Lich was a knowledgeable person. If he could use this kind of person, it would be quite a help. Unfortunately, with the current situation, there was no time to negotiate. This Lich's mind did not have any emotions, it did not have any desires or fears. It was just like an ice-cold machine, carrying out the last thing it did before it disappeared, which was to seek benefits and avoid harm. The Lich could not trust Chu Tian and was not interested in being reborn. It would be better to turn Green City into the land of the undead. This would be more beneficial to him. It's been too long since I've fought with anyone. The Lich's voice did not fluctuate at all. Now let me see just what kind of strength you have. As the Lich spoke, it slowly raised its two skinny arms. The surrounding towers of undead spirits all emitted power like lighthouses. A pitch-black corrosion quickly spread out, as if it was constantly corroding space, causing the entire world to be plunged into darkness. The earth shook. Skeletons climbed out one by one. The entire valley was filled with skeleton soldiers, and each skeleton looked like they were carved from black jade. There was a strong spiritual flame burning in their skulls as they began to move under the Lich's call. There were too many skeletons, and Chu Tian's group was like an island surrounded by a sea of bones. They did not have an advantage in terms of numbers. These skeletons were not simple skeletons. The Lich had used a large amount of death energy to awaken them, so they had a shocking strength for a short period of time. Because there were too many of them, even if they were piled up, they would still die. The little fox grinned. It did not need Chu Tian's order as it took the initiative to charge out. It passed through the sea of skeletons and a blue soul flame sea appeared wherever it went. Large amounts of soul flames came out of the skeletons and finally gathered in the little fox's mouth, becoming a delicacy for it to swallow. Chu Tian said with a smile, "If you only have this much skill, I advise you to just surrender." With this large amount of skeleton soldiers, if they were on the battlefield, they would be invincible. They were not afraid of death and they had decent strength. They were simply natural soldiers. But they just had to meet the undead's nemesis, the little fox. No matter how many of them there were, it was useless because they could not get close at all. Clark loudly ordered, "Destroy everything here." Everyone began to attack in all directions, trying to destroy these towers of undead. They quickly found a problem. Each tower of undead was surrounded by a strong energy, so it was not an easy matter to destroy any one of them. At this time, the Lich coldly chanted an incantation and the towers of undead released black lightning, attacking these people with lightning speed. The death energy condensed into lightning that hit living beings, turning them into undead monsters. This kind of attack was even more terrifying than normal energy attacks. The little fox used its 4 limbs to destroy the skeletons. It found a problem. There seemed to be no end to the skeletons. It had just destroyed a group of skeletons, but when it came back, it found that these skeletons had stood up again. Originally, there was too much death energy in the valley and this energy could continuously summon skeletons, making the little fox too busy to deal with it. Chu Tian slightly narrowed his eyes. The entire valley's energy was in the Lich's hands, so he was an invincible existence. He could control the towers of undead to attack, and he could summon skeletons endlessly. If they didn't have a way to break this great undead array, everyone would be exhausted to death in the end. The Lich did not stop attacking as he slowly raised his arms. The surrounding towers of undead all shot black lightning at the Lich. Countless bolts of lightning gathered in the Lich's hands, instantly forming an incomparably large ball of lightning. His hands gently raised. As the ball of energy slowly rose, it was still wildly gathering energy from all sides. Its color became brighter and brighter, finally turning into a black as thick as iron. Moreover, it was growing at an incredible speed. In just a short 10 seconds, it had become the size of a small mountain. Everyone's expressions changed. Although they knew that the Lich was not weak, it wasn't to the point of being invincible. At least the druid prophet Yoda had the ability to fight him, but after the Lich borrowed the power of the array, his strength increased by more than 10 times. In this situation, no one was a match for him. Once the ball of energy fell, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yoda softly coughed a few times while leaning on his cane. An unexpectedly strong energy came from his body and he was covered in green light. Now that things had come to this, he could only receive this move. Prophet, wait a moment. Chu Tian calmly walked over. Let me deal with this fellow. Everyone was stunned. There was no need to doubt Prophet Yoda's strength. If Yoda turned into a dragon, he could even fight a spirit transformation cultivator. Chu Tian was just a trivial earth spirit cultivator and he was only in the first true spirit layer. The little fox couldn't deal with him at all, so how could he resist this power? Chu Tian did not explain. He leapt up and shot towards the tower of undead spirits like an arrow. He wanted to destroy the tower of death and make the ball of energy lose balance? Impossible. The Tower of Death was protected by a powerful energy and it was not something Chu Tian could break with his strength. When everyone thought that Chu Tian's actions were meaningless, Chu Tian's body suddenly released a burst of power. A terrifying source spirit aura soared into the sky and Chu Tian's eyes turned a dead gray color. The Lich muttered when he saw this. Death energy? Does he have the power of the dead in his body? Chu Tian was surrounded by a layer of gray mist. When the gray mist came out, it was sucked in by the Tower of Death. Chu Tian gave a low roar. Break? There were several explosions coming from the Tower of Death. Large amounts of cracks appeared on the undead pagoda. The number of cracks increased, and the speed at which they spread became faster and faster. In the end, they almost covered the entire undead pagoda, and finally exploded with a loud sound. Dolores was very shocked. How did he do it? The reason why the undead tower was built here is to absorb the energy of death. Our powerful city lord also seems to have the energy of death. Yoda said with a smile that wasn't a smile, the Tower of Death will reject all energy that comes near it, but it won't reject death energy. He used death energy to cause the Tower of Death to lose balance, thus achieving his goal of destroying the Tower of Death. That floating in the air, the almost completely condensed energy ball immediately began to distort. Following that, it began to bulge. Clearly it had lost its balance. Careful defense. Everyone quickly released their protective spirit energy and the energy ball exploded in the air. The explosion did not release any light or heat, rather it released a cold current that covered the entire valley. The entire world was instantly covered in endless darkness. Although the distance was far enough, the energy ball was not complete, and they had protective spirit energy, there were still some weaker people that were heavily injured. It could be seen how strong this attack was. Suddenly, the endless darkness was swept away by a stream of air and was taken away, finally being swallowed into the little fox's stomach. Chu Tian looked at the Lich on the altar. What other skills do you have? The Lich did not say anything. He had to admit that this human was hard to deal with. Since it was like this, he could only use his last move. The earth began to tremble. Everyone could clearly feel a strong sense of resentment being released from the depths of the earth. A large amount of gray fog gushed out from the cracked surface of the ground. Shortly after, the ground continued to shatter, as if something was propping it up. First, a pile of incomparably large gray wings stretched out from the ground. followed by an incomparably large body and incomparably large claws. Chapter 878. Chudent, tell me. Meng Yingying sat in the arena's lounge, her two slender and beautiful legs crossed. She first looked at the forest aborigines waiting in line in the lower hall, then looked at the mirrors hanging on the wall that were broadcasting the battle scenes. Her delicate and beautiful face was not without pride as she said, "How is our virtual arena doing?" This was the first spiritual domain result of Meng Yingying's cooperation with the flower fairies. It could create a completely harmless spiritual space, allowing people to maintain the same abilities in the illusion as in the real world. Therefore, it was impossible to cause actual damage when fighting in the virtual arena. The most important thing was that Meng Yingying had finished broadcasting the virtual arena in the real world. Because the virtual arena used source energy arrays and crystals to create illusions, the illusions could be transmitted to the real world through several methods. Then it could be transmitted to a video player or a normal image transferring mirror, so people in the real world could see the battles in the virtual arena. After the mental internet was established in the future, people from all over the world would be able to compete in the virtual arena. This kind of battle would not result in casualties or enmity, nor would it cause severe damage because of the battle. Those who pursued the path of martial arts could directly observe the duel of experts and comprehend it. Ordinary people could also directly appreciate this kind of unreserved duel and experience the art of combat. This would inevitably become a trend that people chased after, and there was a large business potential hidden in it. When the virtual arena became popular in the future, even if it was just a small fee, it would be enough to make a large profit. Nangong Yun was even more whimsical. She wanted to open a casino, she wanted to organize competitions, she wanted to turn the virtual arena into a kind of culture. Nangong Yun was originally a very combative person. This kind of virtual arena was simply the best place for her to relax. She imagined that whether it was for combative people, martial arts fanatic gamblers, or normal people, the virtual arena would have a vast market. Meng Qingwu also expressed her support for this proposal. Chu Tian deliberately poured a bucket of cold water on her. "You're satisfied just like this? Let me tell you, with this virtual arena of yours, I can find at least a dozen flaws." "Impossible." Meng Yingying's almond-shaped eyes immediately widened, then immediately felt a little guilty. "Eh? Why don't you tell me?" Chu Tian took a sip of tea and said, "I've already noticed that the time in the virtual arena is half the time in real life, so what we see in the real world is not a live broadcast. When the battle in the virtual arena is over, the broadcast outside is only halfway through. Am I right?" "Stupid, stupid, stupid." Meng Yingying was worried that Chu Tian would really ask a question that would hit the nail on the head, but she didn't think that he was only SOSO. She very arrogantly said, "You idiot's brain needs to be changed. This is called business acumen, do you understand? This girl actually dares to teach me a lesson. It's been too long since I spanked her, her guts are really getting bigger and bigger. Everything else is fine, but this brain of hers has the nerve to lecture Chu Tian?" Meng Yingying said, "The arena relies on tickets to make money. If the outside world and the arena are both being broadcasted live, who would buy tickets to go to the arena to watch? Moreover, the slowing down of time in the arena means more matches can be held. Saving time is money. The flower fairies have studied it with me. Although the time in the spiritual world can be adjusted to 1/10 of the time in reality, that kind of situation requires people with strong spiritual energy to be able to adapt. We've tried many times and found that normal people can withstand half the flow of time. In order to adapt to the masses, we set up the arena like this. Boss, I also want to talk to you. Why haven't you improved at all?" Nangong Yun also began to criticize Chu Tian. "Me and Yingying have followed elder sister Qing Wu for so long, we've already begun to understand the way of business." Chu Tian never would have thought that with his outstanding reputation and intelligence, he would be rendered speechless by a stupid girl like Yingying. Even Nangong Yun, his loyal follower, was looking down on him. This was truly a large stain on his life. "Ku, this is just testing you. I want to see if you can create this kind of effect by chance. It seems like you're still sloppy, But what I want to spend the most is not this. All right, you don't need to say any more. Meng Yingying had finally teased Chu Tian. She didn't want Chu Tian to take it back. She immediately said, Miracle City's popularity isn't enough and we can't make money fast enough. Shouldn't we help elder sister a bit? Let her have less of a headache. You actually have this kind of heart? Tell me what you want to do. We can do this. Meng Yingying immediately whispered into Chu Tian's ear. Chu Tian nodded when he heard this. Although there were many ways to make money, this kind of method was a bit interesting. There were a large number of forest locals that came to Miracle City's conscription. This was because Miracle City was completely open to the surrounding tribes during the conscription period. Even if the forest locals didn't participate with a wait-and-see attitude, they would at least pay attention to it. Most of them came to Miracle City to join in on the fun. Because of the attention brought by the conscription, the arena would definitely become famous in the forest. This would have a very good effect on the company's popularity. There were some forest tribe chiefs and high-level members that came because their tribe had people joining the army, so they naturally came to take a look. Recently they had been hearing about how magical the virtual arena was every day. This made their hearts itch, wishing they could go in and test their skills. But it was very regretful. The arena was not open right now. It was impossible for these people to sign up for the army, so they could only suppress their curiosity and ask about the arena every day. But when they were bored, Miracle City released another piece of news. Miracle City was after the arena. Now they had opened another trial field. This trial field was different from the arena. The trial field was divided into 10 checkpoints, and each checkpoint would present an extremely difficult challenge. Miracle Commerce had set up very generous prizes. It was said that whoever could break through to the 5th stage would be rewarded with 100 low-grade source stones, whoever could break through to the 8th stage would be rewarded with 1,000 low-grade source stones, and whoever could break through to the 10th stage would be rewarded with 10,000 low-grade source stones. Other than the generous source stone rewards, each stage would have a random gift. They were all Miracle Commerce's top products or unexpected surprises. They couldn't be missed. Of course, the trial field was not free. Each challenge required 2 source stones and one had to be at least in the true spirit realm to have the qualifications to challenge. This was simply made for the forest experts. Recently, these people's hearts had been itched by Miracle City's arena. Now that there was another trial field, how could they miss it? Wasn't it just 2 source stones? Even if these true spirit experts were poor, they wouldn't be unable to take out a trivial 2 source stones. This news had only been released for a few hours. 7-8 chiefs led 50-60 tribe experts to the trial field. The Minotaur chief Arnold was one of them. He anxiously shouted as soon as he arrived, "How do I play in the trial field? Quickly tell me, I want to earn 10,000 source stones." Ha, Arnold, with your brain, you still want to earn 10,000 source stones? Let me do it. The reason why these people were filled with confidence was because Miracle City's advertisement clearly stated that of the 10 trials in the trial field, the monsters and demon beasts that appeared were not strong. As long as they found the right method, even a first true spirit layer expert could easily pass them. How could these chiefs who were proud of their bravery not be moved? The weakest among them was in the 3rd true spirit layer. They could earn 10,000 source stones by clearing all 10 trials. This kind of temptation was just too big. Meng Yingying stood at the entrance of the trial field and very politely said to everyone, "Respected warriors, because the trial field is still being tested, the space isn't that big. It can only hold 10 people at a time, so warriors that want to challenge it must first pay the fee." "I'll go first." Arnold took out 2 source stones to give to Meng Yingying, who was collecting the money. His 2 large nostrils let out a rough breath as he looked at the other chiefs with a face filled with rage. "Just wait and see, father will definitely succeed." When Arnold entered the trial field, he immediately appeared in an illusion. This was a hall that wasn't too big. After a few minutes, there were sharp howls in his ears as a large group of ghosts appeared in the hall. These ghosts did not have strong auras, only being in the 6th to 7th awakened soul layer. Arnold laughed. This kind of trash wanted to deal with father? This money was just too easy to earn. Arnold raised his massive axe and condensed energy on the axe's edge. In an instant, the specter's corporeal body was destroyed. Then a second, a third, a fourth. Even though there were many specters, these monsters were not very powerful. Arnold used 10 minutes to destroy them all. When Arnold thought he would easily pass this trial, he was surprised to find that the ghosts he had cut apart had reformed, not a single one missing. What is going on? Arnold stared with wide eyes, not understanding why this kind of situation had occurred. However, the Minotaurs would not use their brains to solve things that they could use their muscles to solve. He wildly charged around and finally killed all of the specters. Countless fragments gathered again. The ghosts all recovered. Damn, could it be that he had been tricked? This was simply a dead end. How could he pass this? When Arnold killed all the ghosts for the third time, he felt like he had used up most of his strength, but what made him feel despair was that the ghosts gathered again. This time, Arnold did not have the strength to kill them all. When Arnold calmed down and observed, he finally found something fishy. The statues in this palace all had some kind of formation supporting them. It was this power that allowed the specters to revive. If Arnold had found a way to destroy the statues from the start, he could have easily killed all the specters. Damn, why was I so stupid? I didn't even notice such an obvious mechanism. Arnold did not have any strength left. Countless ghosts charged over and instantly tore him to pieces, while Arnold returned to the trial field. The other chiefs looked at each other in blank dismay. He came out after going in for 2 minutes? The trial field is different from the arena. The time in the trial field is 1/20th of the outside worlds, so Chief Arnold has already spent 40 minutes inside. Nangong Yun walked over with a smile that wasn't a smile. But Chief Arnold, you didn't even pass a single trial, so you can only obtain a consolation prize. 5 large cans of level 2 meat. After saying this, a half-elf carried 5 cans the size of buckets and brought them to him. Ha ha ha. Arnold, you actually didn't even pass a single trial. These people immediately began to unscrupulously laugh at him. Arnold's bull face immediately turned red. He angrily argued, "Fuck, I was just careless. I want to play again." Arnold once again entered the trial space. In the end, Arnold came out in less than 30 seconds. Arnold's bull face twitched a few times. Damn, the statues can't be blindly destroyed. They have a certain pattern and have to be destroyed in order. This Minotaur chief was clearly anxious, entering the trial space again and again. Most of the time, he didn't even last 2 minutes before coming out. Like this, he played over 10 times and used up over 30 low-grade source stones. I've definitely found the pattern. Arnold excitedly gasped for breath. Although he had lost over 30 source stones and instantly spent all his savings, he didn't feel any heartache at all. Rather, it was like he was looking for fun. I've spent all my source stones. Who can lend me a few? I'll definitely pass this trial. There won't be any problems. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun were collecting money on the side. The trial space was not as big as the arena. It could only hold 10 people at a time. However, it was good that time passed in the trial space, so it only took a few minutes to finish a round. These true spirit cultivators' spiritual energy was not weak, so they wouldn't be tired even if they played for several hours. Meng Yingying secretly nudged Nangong Yun beside her. How much did we earn? Shoo, be quiet. Nangong Yun furtively winked at her. Chief Arnold is 32, Chief Andre is 28, and Great Warrior Luca is 24. That's around 300 in total. Meng Yingying almost laughed out loud from happiness. This was too easy to earn. It had only been half an hour and there were still many people lining up outside. There were more and more people and Meng Yingying found that there were gnomes and druids inside. These people seemed like they were all here to challenge out of curiosity. If the trial space was in operation for a day, how many source stones would they earn? These idiots, they didn't even use their brains to think. How could Chu Tian's questions be so easy to solve? Moreover, this fellow Chu Tian was very sly, just like Arnold. Although he failed every time, he would find a way to solve it in the end, so he kept trying. He wanted to earn 10,000 source stones? In his dreams. The first trial was like this. It would be strange if he didn't lose his underwear. Chapter 879. Bone Dragon, as the name implied. This was an undead formed from the bones of a dragon. The dragon race was a large group. There were high-level dragons like giant dragons and flood dragons, as well as low-level dragons like earth dragons and dinosaurs. The bone dragon that appeared in front of Chu Tian, although it was not a top-level giant dragon, it was still an undead formed from a dragon that was only inferior to a giant dragon. Turning a high-level dragon into an undead was not an easy matter to accomplish. No matter how strong the Lich was, it was still only at the heaven spirit realm. Even if it had 100 years, it still might not be able to create an undead bone dragon. This bone dragon's corpse had been buried here for a long time. It had been bred in this extreme environment for countless years, and each bone was filled with death energy. It was already an excellent undead material, and as long as it was awakened with a special method, it would immediately become a terrifying undead monster. After the Lich had awakened the bone dragon, his body, which was floating above the altar, suddenly shot out in a straight line. His body ignited in blue flames in midair, like a burning butterfly. He actually rapidly flew up and landed on the body of the huge bone dragon, which was shrouded in gray energy. What is it doing? A sacrificial technique. Chu Tian was a bit surprised by the Lich's actions, using the Lich's body as a sacrifice to transform the body, pouring all of its soul flame and spirit into the bone dragon's body, fusing with the bone dragon and breaking away from the Lich's body. The dragon skeleton contained an incomparably strong resentment and curse. This was something that any soul would find hard to endure, but the Lich was not affected at all, so it slowly refined the bone dragon's remnant thoughts. In order to make this powerful body his own, he had to fuse with the bone dragon ahead of time. Roar. The bone dragon roared into the sky like it had been reborn. That skeletal body was filled with blue flames, and from its head to its tail, from its body to its wings, its entire skeleton seemed to be covered in a gray membrane. This membrane was filled with blue and white flames, which was the Lich's full power. The bone dragon's eyes released a purple glow. The Lich's soul flame was already sealed in the bone dragon's body. This was no longer just a bone dragon, but rather a Lich dragon. The Lich's powerful strength and the bone dragon's destructive power were fused together at this moment. With a casual flap of its giant wings, a fierce energy flowed into the surroundings. Its 30-meter-long giant body was covered in this powerful energy, and there was not a single blind spot from head to toe. However, when the Lich dragon was formed, it immediately felt a strong, attractive force that quickly stole its power. This fellow was not anyone else, it was the little fox. The Lich dragon angrily roared, and with lightning-fast speed, a giant dragon claw covered in flames slammed into the little fox. Like it was slapping an ant, it slammed the little fox into the ground, and the wild strength caused the surrounding several dozen meters to collapse. Dolores was shocked. Sir demonic god! Gray mist appeared on Chu Tian's shoulder, and the little fox suddenly turned around. There was no way around it. The Lich dragon was too strong. It was different from the other undead monsters. The Lich dragon still had the Lich's memories and intelligence, even the Lich's techniques. The Lich was clearly on guard against the little fox. Therefore, he used a secret technique to seal the soul flame. As long as the soul flame was still there, the Lich dragon would not be destroyed. As for the power that was sucked away, it didn't count for anything. The Lich dragon did not care at all. As long as it was within several dozen miles, the Lich dragon could directly absorb the energy from the undead towers. Its energy was endless, and there was no way to defeat it. The Lich dragon's giant body circled in the sky. Although it had been turned into a Lich dragon, the ceremony did not stop. Rather, it became even fiercer, and if this continued, Green City would be destroyed in at most an hour. Stop him! Clark led the gnomes to make a move. Giant logs were pulled out from the ground, and each log was several dozen meters long. They were all covered in runes that wrapped around the Lich dragon's body. Who would have thought that before this energy could land on the Lich dragon, a flame would come out of the Lich dragon's mouth and instantly turn everything to ashes? This flame did not dissipate because of this. When the flame fell on the sea of skeletons, it was like a flame falling into alcohol, quickly spreading in all directions. Large amounts of skeleton warriors were covered in flames. These skeletons that were ignited were not destroyed, rather it was like they were filled with a powerful energy. Their bodies were covered in flames, and whether it was their speed or strength, they were all increased by several times. Their madness increased by over 100 times as they wildly attacked like a swarm of bloodthirsty ants. Die here and become one of us. The Lich Dragon's emotionless voice reverberated in the sky, and it could be heard even from several dozen miles away. Several dozen undead towers filled its body with energy, and the Lich Dragon's aura became stronger and stronger. At this time, in the center of the sea of burning undead, there was also a dignified dragon roar. Yoda's 1-meter-tall frame transformed into a 10-meter-long green dragon. A scorching dragon's breath burst out, incinerating hundreds of skeleton warriors into ashes. Druid? Your strength is far too lacking. The Lich Dragon charged down and the green dragon charged up. These two powerful beings released dragon breaths at the same time, and the two flames canceled each other out. Finally, the two giant figures collided with each other, and the Lich Dragon pressed the green dragon to the ground. Both sides began a fierce battle. The green dragon was only several meters long, and the Lich Dragon was over 30 meters long, so the green dragon did not have any advantage in size. Not to mention that Yoda was injured, and the Lich Dragon was not only strong, it also had an inexhaustible energy. Yoda could not defeat the other side. As expected, the two dragons fiercely attacked each other at the same time. The green dragon spat out a dragon flame filled with the aura of life, burning most of the Lich Dragon's wings. The Lich Dragon's death energy condensed into flames that burned the green dragon's back and abdomen, causing large pieces of rotten flesh to fall down like rain. The green dragon's life force was very strong. If it was a normal creature, even if it was a mammoth, this flame would have turned it into an undead mammoth. The green dragon was clearly not lightly injured. The flames on the Lich Dragon's left wing were covered in black energy and were extinguished in just a few seconds. It didn't seem like it had suffered any damage at all. Yoda could not last more than a few minutes. Now that the others were surrounded by the sea of skeletons, it was hard for them to support him. Even if they had a chance to support him, did they have a way to threaten this Lich Dragon with infinite strength? Too weak. The Lich Dragon sent the green dragon flying several meters away with a single attack. The wounds on the Lich Dragon's body quickly healed with the death energy. You are not worthy of Green City. Eternal darkness and death will give you eternity. Do you think you've already won? When the Lich Dragon heard this voice, it was a bit stunned. It found that this unfathomable human had taken advantage of its battle with the druids to jump onto the altar. What do you want to do? Do what? Chu Tian stood in the center of the altar's array and released his 9-eyed demon god Source Spirit. An aura that looked down on the world seemed to suppress the Lich Dragon. Chu Tian's eyes had already turned an ash-gray color. This was the color of death energy. Your array is too crude. I just took a glance and found the method to control it. Chu Tian's palms suddenly clapped together. In that instant, the wind and clouds changed. The sky was filled with surging waves of energy, and the surrounding undead towers began to tremble. The Lich Dragon's mind that had not fluctuated in several hundred years suddenly had a ripple as it was filled with a feeling of shock. Impossible! I dug this array out of the ruins, and it took me 300 years to perfect it before I could control it. Chu Tian used his actions to answer the Lich Dragon. The array in the sky began to change. The runes began to reform and the formation began to change, gradually turning into a new source energy array. The energy that had been sent out, in just a short few seconds, all gathered back in the valley. A large ripple spread out. The Lich Dragon found that it was gradually losing control of the surrounding undead. The large group of undead attacking Clark and the others all stopped like a machine that had been shut down. When they started up again, they all turned around and charged at the Lich Dragon. These undead were controlled by the Lich's undead towers, and now Chu Tian had taken control of the Lich's undead towers. The Lich Dragon had lost control of the undead army. Clark, Yoda, and Dolores all revealed looks of shock. What did it mean to take control of a lich? Not only did it require powerful strength, Chu Tian controlling the altar wasn't enough. He also needed to have higher attainments in the domain of death than the lich. The lich dragon gave an angry roar and gave up on the heavily injured green dragon. Its large body flew into the air and shattered hundreds of skeletons, charging at Chu Tian on the altar. When it got close to the altar, the lich dragon hit a giant gray barrier and bounced back. Chu Tian gave a laugh. You've worked hard to gather this power. If you fought it safely, you would have won. But you gave up the altar to protect the undead towers. This is putting the cart before the horse and making a big mistake. It seems like becoming a lich did not make your brain any smarter. Now we can properly play around. Chu Tian completely controlled the altar. The altar was equivalent to a controller, or it could be said to be an encrypted controller. All the power in the undead towers was controlled by the altar. The lich was too confident. He did not think that other than him, there was no one else who could control the altar. Now he was paying the price for his mistake. A few minutes ago, the ruler of this basin was still the lich. Chapter 880. This virtual trial field was Meng Yingying and Nan Gongyun's idea. They had found inspiration in the Central State Trial Tower, but it was different from the Trial Tower. Although the Trial Tower was not very dangerous, there was still the possibility of death. This was an unavoidable matter because no matter how perfect the safety measures were, there was no way to completely avoid being injured in battle. Miracle City's virtual trial field was not the same. It was a pure spiritual illusion, so it was completely harmless. Not to mention the fact that it was cheap to build, Miracle Commerce could mass-produce it and turn it into a challenge for everyone. It would turn the trial field into an entertainment field for experts. This was where its charm lay. This temporary trial field was just like the advertisement said. As long as the challenger found the correct method, it was more than enough for the first true spirit layer to pass all the stages. The problem was, were Chu Tian's stages easy for people to pass? There were a total of 10 stages. The first stage had several dozen random scenes. The challenger would trigger one of them every day. Now that Chief Arnold was here, the 10 challengers were going through a different environment. If they came to challenge again the next day, there would be another random scene. After Arnold knew the rules of the game, he was even more anxious to pass the first stage. Therefore, he borrowed several source stones from his clansmen and tried several times. Almost all of the wrong ideas were tried, and finally, Arnold found the only correct idea. Arnold entered the trial field. He immediately followed the lessons learned from his previous failures and used the correct order to shatter the stone statues one by one. Then, he killed the large group of ghosts. As expected, the spirits did not revive again. He finally passed the first stage. Success! I did it! Arnold roared out in joy as he looked at the door of light in front of the main hall. He knew that this was the path to the second stage. Arnold calmed his mind and entered the second stage. This was a strange environment. There was nothing around him, like he was in a chaotic void. It was like he was standing on a black mirror. Although there was light reflected, he couldn't see anything. What kind of challenge was this time? Arnold looked left and right in confusion. White ripples appeared on the mirror-like ground in front of him. It was like a pebble was thrown into the water. Faint ripples appeared and spread outwards. Arnold didn't know what was going on, but he smelled something unusual. He instinctively retreated a bit. At the center of the ripples, a black crystal-like sculpture suddenly appeared. At first, this sculpture was just a mass of constantly changing liquid, but it quickly solidified. Then all kinds of edges and corners appeared, finally forming an image. When Arnold saw what it looked like, he couldn't help but be shocked. Isn't this me? This is a mirror image that looks exactly like Arnold. However, Arnold was very clear that this was not a normal mirror image because from the other side's eyes, he could only feel an icy coldness. That was a calm gaze that didn't have a trace of emotion. Arnold immediately understood. The second stage of the trial was to defeat himself. This was a bit interesting. Arnold had fought with countless experts of the forest, but he had never fought himself before. He never thought that he would be able to experience fighting himself in this place. He immediately released a low roar as he released his strength, instantly turning into a shockwave that charged at the other side. The Minotaur's most commonly used charge. The Minotaurs relied on their powerful bodies and spirit energy to charge at the opponent, breaking their defenses. Although it was a direct attack without any technique, there was no need to doubt its destructive power. The mirror image seemed to have expected that it would encounter this kind of attack, and immediately dodged sideways, sending out an axe light that directly swept away Arnold. Arnold was shocked to find a terrifying problem. This mirror image was not just like him, it had a deep understanding of him. Whether it was strength, cultivation technique, or martial skills, they were all the same. But the two of them had a deep understanding of him. Compared to Arnold, the mirror image was much calmer. Therefore, it could find Arnold's flaws and launch the most effective attack. Too powerful. Arnold already understood the meaning of the trial. The goal of the second trial was to defeat the strongest self. This meant that he couldn't make a breakthrough in battle. Facing his strongest self, he had no chance of winning. Only by making a breakthrough in his limit could he defeat the mirror image in front of him. This was a perfect chance for him to reach his limit and understand himself. Good. Very good. Arnold excitedly roared out as his fighting spirit became more and more intense. Father doesn't believe it. Could it be that I can't even defeat myself? In the end, Arnold exchanged 4-5 moves with the mirror image before the mirror image grasped a flaw. The large axe cut Arnold in half, causing Arnold to disappear from the second trial. Arnold had to believe it. The mirror image knew all of Arnold's weaknesses and the mirror image was very calm. If Arnold could not overcome his weaknesses, they would become fatal flaws. No matter what, Arnold still passed the first trial. The others immediately asked Arnold about the second trial. When they found out that the second trial's target was them, everyone had a look of surprise on their faces. Congratulations, Chief Arnold. Meng Ying was worried that no one had passed for a long time and that it would affect their confidence. Now that Chief Arnold had passed, she could let out a sigh of relief. You have passed the first trial and have received a chance to draw a prize. Please immediately enter the lottery. Nangong Yun sent over a large lottery wheel. The others curiously came over to take a look, because they vaguely realized that although the trial was interesting, the difficulty was higher than they had imagined. How could passing all 10 trials be easy? The reward of 10,000 spirit stones was probably not easy to obtain, but when they saw the lottery wheel, their spirits were roused. This wheel was divided into several areas and there were source stone rewards. There were 10, 50, and 100 source stones rewards, as well as many other things. Of course, these things were things that most of the locals had never seen before. Arnold poured his elemental energy into the wheel. The needle on the large wheel began to spin. Arnold's bull eyes opened wide as he kept repeating, 100 source stones, 100 source stones, 100 source stones. If he could obtain 100 source stones, not only would he not lose this challenge, he would even earn half of it. The locals of the Forest of Chaos, although they were very strong because of their primitive society, they had not developed a mature business and economic model. Therefore, the forest locals were very poor. Even the 3 great clans of a small country like the Southern Summer Country could easily take out 100 source stones worth of gold coins at their peak. But as a tribe in the depths of the Forest of Chaos, Arnold's Minotaur tribe had several dozen true spirit experts. Even as the chief, he was only worth this much. Therefore, 100 source stones was not a small sum for Chief Arnold. The needle of the wheel had reached the 100 yuan stone range. Just as it was about to stop, it suddenly moved a little and landed in the next range. Everyone gave a sigh. Arnold roared out in anger. You've drawn Miracle Commerce's source energy cannon. Meng Ying shouted in a very surprised voice, Congratulations to Chief Arnold. Arnold was a bit stunned. What? Cannon? What cannon? Miracle Commerce's prizes were mostly high-tech products made by the company. The might of the source energy cannons was very terrifying. If each source energy cannon was sold to a rich kingdom, it wouldn't be a problem for a source energy cannon to be sold for several dozen source stones. Not to mention that miracle commerce was limited by materials and refining technology. The production of the source energy cannons wasn't high, and they had never sold this kind of weapon before. The so-called rare things were expensive, so the price of the source energy cannon in the Forest of Chaos would be several times higher. Chief Arnold's luck really isn't bad. Meng Yingying used this chance to advertise Miracle Commerce's weapon. The source energy cannon is a source energy weapon invented by Miracle Commerce. It has a very long range and is very powerful. A single shot can destroy half a mountain, and even an earth spirit cultivator would be shattered by a single shot. It's really that strong? Of course. On the entire continent, only our Miracle Commerce has the source energy weapon technology. Meng Yingying said to Arnold, "The source energy cannon is not for sale right now. Chief Arnold can auction it here. I think there will be many people interested in this weapon." Nangong Yun had already brought out the source energy cannon. This cannon was much more refined than when it was first made, and it was a bit smaller, but its might was even stronger. Everyone could feel the energy fluctuations coming from it, and the incomparably complex source energy array patterns dazzled everyone's eyes. Artillery shells. Of course, they had to buy them separately. Miracle Commerce was using this chance to promote their firearms. This firearms trade would be one of Miracle Commerce's most important sources of income in the future. Good stuff. Arnold, I'll give 50 pieces. Sell it to us, I'll give 70 pieces. Arnold didn't want to sell it at first. He could see that the might of this thing was shocking. If it was placed in the Minotaur Valley, it would increase the defenses of the Minotaur Valley by a large amount. But as the bids became higher and higher, Arnold was moved in the end. He sold it to a forest merchant for 120 low-grade primeval stones. Arnold never would have thought that in the end, not only did he not suffer any losses, he would actually earn back his capital with interest. He even earned more than double the amount of primeval stones. This was not just a matter of reward, it was also a matter of dignity and face. Arnold was the only one of the challengers to pass the test. This trial field is too fun. Interesting, there's a trace of it. Arnold put the source stones in his pocket and laughed a few times before saying, "But I'm tired from playing today, I'll go back and sleep before continuing." Because time flowed very slowly in the trial field, this kind of spiritual illusion could easily cause fatigue. Arnold had only played for an hour on the surface, but his mind had been fighting for close to 20 hours. The continuous mental fatigue stacked on top of each other, and even a minotaur like Arnold felt a bit tired. Arnold had picked up a large bargain. The other people couldn't sit still again. When they found out about the second trial, everyone felt like their hearts were being scratched by a cat. The trial field's business was very good from start to finish. An entire day passed and there were more and more people lining up. The trial field was not idle from start to finish. Nangong Yun and Meng Yingying were collecting money until their hands were soft. Chapter 881. Necromancy was one of the rare attributes. There were very few cultivators on the continent with necromancy talent, and there were even fewer top scholars in this field. The Lich was one of the best and had the qualifications to become an undead sage, so he had the qualifications to be proud and confident. This array was dug out from the ruins, and the Lich had studied it for a long time before putting it into practice. How could an outsider see through it with a single glance? It was because he was too confident, or because he was too rational. The Lich left the altar to stop Chu Tian from destroying the undead tower. Who would have thought that it would backfire? Like this, even if he merged with the bone dragon, the Lich's advantage would be gone. The Lich dragon knew that controlling the altar meant controlling everything in the valley, so all the power gathered here would be controlled by Chu Tian. With this power, Chu Tian would become an invincible existence. The Lich dragon could only hope that Chu Tian could kill him when he was still not familiar with controlling the altar. That way, there would still be a chance to turn the tables. The Lich dragon condensed large amounts of blue and green flames that turned into a wave of flames that shot at the altar. However, when the altar was attacked, it was blocked by a thick necromancy energy. Even with the Lich dragon's power, it could not break through it. He was disappointed. Chu Tian was already in complete control of the situation. Chu Tian shouted while controlling the array. Don't tell me you don't know how strong this altar's control is? Just surrender. The Lich Dragon, of course, did not surrender. Its body was filled with blue flames that suddenly came out of its bones and exploded like fireworks. There were countless blue lights that were like tentacles that fell onto the surrounding towers, connecting all of these towers. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. This fellow really did have some skills. Connecting itself to the towers, even if the altar was taken away, the Lich Dragon could still absorb energy from the towers. After all, the towers were personally made by the Lich, so he was very familiar with their internal structure. In just a few seconds, the flames in the Lich Dragon's body became more than 10 times stronger. The blue and green flames came out of its body like crystals, forming a solid shell over its body. This fierce and terrifying skeleton dragon actually turned into a giant dragon carved from crystal in this short period of time. Everyone's faces fell. The Lich Dragon could actually do this? If it was like this, Chu Tian would not be able to defeat the Lich Dragon even if he controlled the altar. The Lich Dragon could use the power of the towers to gather its strength, so it was hard to imagine how strong it was. Chu Tian himself was too weak, so he had no way of defeating the Lich Dragon. Roar! The almost solidified flame energy on the Lich Dragon's body continued to condense, turning from blue to dark blue before finally turning gray. This was already an undead monster that had never been heard of before. The skeletons under the Lich Dragon were shaken by the roar and fell down like harvested wheat. The soul flames in their skulls were scattered and they were all instantly killed by this aura. But at this time, the death energy that the Lich had been pouring into the sky over the past few days condensed bit by bit. Like a giant bolt of lightning, it suddenly fell down on the altar Chu Tian was on. The sky collapsed. The sky collapsed. It was like a large hole had been opened in the sky and countless gray and black energy wildly poured down like a waterfall. The energy that the Lich had prepared to destroy Green City in one fell swoop was completely withdrawn at this moment. It completely surrounded the altar and turned into a black ocean. Quickly run! When everyone saw the black wave wildly surging over, they all cried out in shock. This situation was not something they could help with. If they were submerged in the sea of death, they would instantly turn into undead monsters. Everyone quickly retreated from this place. When they looked back, the entire basin was dark like a large bowl filled with black liquid. Everything had already been submerged and no one knew what was happening inside. At this time, a crazy roar resounded in the Black Sea. An undead dragon, whose entire body was grayish-black, as if made of crystal, flapped his huge wings and soared into the sky. His whole body was surrounded by the aura of countless vengeful spirits. He opened his huge mouth, and the surrounding energy quickly gathered towards him. In just an instant, a black energy ball with a diameter of 3 to 4 meters was formed. The black energy ball was still wildly expanding with countless bolts of lightning surrounding it. The might of this attack was not inferior to the Lich's attack from the undead tower. Clark's face sunk. With this monster's strength, perhaps even a spirit transformation cultivator would find it hard to deal with it. I think the city lord is in danger. Chu Tian had already released the energy to deal with Green City, so Green City was completely safe now. However, with this terrifying undead dragon here, wouldn't Green City not be safe? After several generations of gnome experts, there were no spirit transformation cultivators guarding this place. If they met this kind of attack, perhaps they would suffer heavy losses. Only Chu Tian had a way to deal with these undead monsters. If Chu Tian lost and was killed by the Lich Dragon, a disaster for Green City would be hard to avoid. Clark and the gnomes had no choice but to admit a fact. The human they had always looked down on, the human they were not willing to accept, was actually an important person supporting the survival of Green City. He had basically become Green City's only hope. The Lich Dragon flapped its wings and the black hole-like ball of energy flew to the center of the basin. Wherever it went, space trembled and the momentum was earth-shattering. It was very terrifying. At this moment, a giant black sword soared into the sky and cleaved the energy ball in half. The black ocean quickly gathered in the middle and finally formed an incomparably huge figure. He looked like an indomitable 10-eyed demon god. 9 of his eyes were tightly shut, and only one of his grayish-black eyes was open. He was incomparably large with a pair of wings on his back. He looked down on all living beings and he held a giant black sword in his hand, just like a war god from the underworld. What is this? When things developed to this point, everything had already surpassed their imaginations. The Lich Dragon could feel that this powerful demon god monster was actually created by Chu Tian using the power of the array and the undead energy. As for how he did it, the Lich Dragon was not clear. Even with his 2,000 years of knowledge, he had never heard of such a terrifying and powerful cultivation technique in this world. Not to mention him. Even the most intelligent person in the world would not know that this cultivation technique was called the Demon and God 9 transformations. The demon god gave a low, angry roar and slowly raised its giant sword. The black aura in the surroundings all gathered towards the giant sword blade dragon, finally turning into flames that soared into the sky. Chu Tian could not maintain this state for long. Therefore, he gathered all of them together to decide victory. The solidified crystals on the Lich Dragon's body began to boil again and the flames engulfed its body, making it look like it had doubled in size. It looked like it was a dark phoenix that came out of the underworld, directly using its burning body to release an earth-shattering attack. The demon god raised its giant sword glow and slammed it down on the dark phoenix's body. The energy released this time created a shockwave that created quite a large storm for several dozen kilometers. Break for me! The god-demon sword's destructive power and boundless deathly energy fused together, instantly exploding forth with astonishing power. The god-demon sword sliced through the black phoenix's head, and by the time the blade came out from its tail, the god-demon sword had reached its limit and exploded. Chu Tian was sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. There were injuries all over his body, and whether it was his mind or strength, he would need at least 10-15 days of rest to recover. But it didn't matter. The Lich Dragon was cut in half and all of its energy disappeared. The dragon skeleton that was pieced together by the secret death technique fell apart and large amounts of fragments covered several miles. The death energy in the death basin completely disappeared. Everything returned to normal in a short period of time. It's over? It's all over? This shocking battle made those who saw it unable to recover for a long time. The little fox was wildly swallowing the death energy in the basin and cleaning up the aftermath. After around 2 hours, the Green City army rushed over. When they saw the mess in the basin, they were all stunned. This was a battle that changed the landscape. This level of battle was something even peak true spirit cultivators could not do. Finally, Chu Tian, who couldn't move, was carried out. Although the side effects were large, Chu Tian's consciousness was still clear. He did not waste words and just ordered Clark, "Immediately send people to seal off the basin, no one is allowed to enter." Clark did not dare underestimate Chu Tian at all. "Understood, Sir City Lord." Not long after Chu Tian was sent back to Green City, Chu Tian's bravery was known by everyone in Green City. With Chu Tian's strength alone, he had saved the entire Green City. He was the savior of the green religion and the gnomes, which created a large response in Green City. Then, everything that happened next was logical. The third day, the Green Religion's gnome elders announced to the entire city that the acting city lord Chu Tian had officially become the sole city lord of Green City. The entire Green City had to listen to Chu Tian's orders. Although there were many twists and turns and many changes, he finally sat on the city lord's throne. The first thing Chu Tian announced was a name change. In order to welcome a new beginning for Green City and to represent Chu Tian becoming the city lord, Green City could no longer be called Green City, its name had to be changed. From today onwards, the Green City of the Forest of Chaos would forever become a thing of the past. This city would be renamed to Miracle City, Miracle City. This was a city in the center of the Forest of Chaos. Although it had an outstanding location, it was not a very remarkable city and it was not a very strong city. Miracle City was still a mess. Chapter 882. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun excitedly handed over the spoils of war to Chu Tian. It was a heavy bag full of source stones. The three of them carefully counted it. There was a total of 3,500 low-grade source stones. When the number appeared in front of them, the three of them were still very shocked. Although they had used the conscription to attract many forest experts, to be able to obtain this kind of result was too exaggerated. Chu Tian remembered that Meng Qingwu had done a rough valuation of their assets today. Miracle Commerce's assets, if converted into source stones, did not even amount to 200,000 low-grade source stones. As for the current reserves, it was around 30 to 40,000 low-grade source stones. Miracle Commerce had been established for over a year. This was the entire harvest. Although Meng Qingwu and Chu Tian were a little dissatisfied, this was not a small number to any power or family. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu had started from scratch. Moreover, they had started from scratch in a small country. For them to be able to achieve this in a year was something to be proud of. Looking at it now, it really was too little. The few of them had worked together to build a small trial field and had actually earned 10% of Miracle Commerce's cash in a single day. This had fully displayed the huge commercial potential of the virtual spirit technology. This was definitely a good way to make quick money. Meng Yingying said with deep emotion, "You didn't see the scene, so you don't know. Those natives were really too crazy. Don't look at how poor they are normally, but right now it was as if they had picked up money from the ground. Those fellows that didn't get a chance to line up all got angry on the spot and almost started fighting. I was puzzled, was it really that fun? The Forest of Chaos is rich in resources and the natives don't lack cultivation resources. The environment here is very closed and there aren't any outside goods, so there aren't many places to spend money. Source stones aren't omnipotent in the Forest of Chaos, so they don't care about source stones as much as the outside world." Chu Tian thought about it and said, "Of course, it's mainly because their lives are too boring and empty. It was hard to find a place to have fun, and although I know it's hard to make money from the trial field, I still couldn't resist the itch to try it out." "Who cares?" Nangong Yun excitedly said, "Deducting the spiritual space's operating costs and the prizes, we can earn at least 3,000, which is 30,000 in 10 days. Let's ruthlessly slaughter these fellows first and solve Miracle City's financial crisis first. We have to cast a long line to catch a big fish. Just focusing on these people isn't enough. We have to make our reputation bigger and attract more people." Chu Tian shook his head. "This trial field is too simple. It won't take more than 10 days to half a month for people to be bored with it. At that time, the profits will fall. Since we want to ruthlessly slaughter these fellows, we need to create a better attraction." Meng Yingying asked, "What do you want to do?" "Simple." Chu Tian gave a laugh. "Let's create a bigger, more fun, and more interesting trial field. In the next few days." On one side was the large recruitment and on the other side was the virtual trial field. There were some shaman priests and green religion priests that came to line up. Everyone gathered together to discuss strategies and how to deal with their own mirror images, but most of them were complaining that the trial field was too small, making them line up for a long time without being able to play a single round. Just as the people were waiting in line and feeling very annoyed, someone suddenly said, "Hey, do you know? I've heard the latest news. The City Lord has brought people to create a new trial field and the trial content here will be moved over. At that time, even if 1,000 people start at the same time, it will be more than enough." "Really?" Arnold and the others revealed looks of joy. If there really was a trial field that could hold 1,000 people, would they still need to line up like this? "I've also heard about it. The new trial field is different from this one. Not only will it have individual challenges, it will also have group challenges. We will be able to participate in the trial with our clansmen and the prizes will be even richer." Everyone's bodies trembled. "What? There's actually this kind of thing. This kind of individual challenge trial was already very interesting. Could it be that they would also have group challenges?" Everyone began to discuss with each other. As if to confirm everyone's guess, there was a giant airship with a giant screen floating in the sky. When had the forest locals ever seen this kind of big fellow flying in the sky? They were all stunned. It was fine if there was an airship floating in the sky, But this airship was not the main point. The main point was the content being advertised. Do you want to challenge the Hell Demon Dragon? Do you want to challenge the Mountain Giant? Miracle Commerce's trial field will fulfill your dream of challenging and let you experience the joy and thrill of fighting a peak life form. The voice was transmitted through the loudspeaker, and at the same time, various images began to appear on the big screen. It was a world of volcanoes filled with lava, and a huge figure slowly floated up from the huge lava lake. It was a huge dragon, and its black body split open, with flames and heat spewing out. Its entire body was burning in the flames of death, and it let out a furious roar that filled the sky. The image suddenly zoomed out at this time. There were large amounts of strange demons appearing in the volcanoes, just like it was the territory of a demon. Suddenly, there was a blood-boiling background music from the speakers. There was a large group of brave warriors descending from the sky. There were ogres, barbarians, and minotaurs, all of them from the forest races. They were all covered in light as they landed in the middle of the monsters. All kinds of beautiful cultivation techniques and martial skills were released, destroying large amounts of monsters as they swept through the area at a shocking speed. Finally, the demon dragon in the lava lake was startled. The volcanoes all erupted. Countless pillars of flame soared into the sky. In this apocalyptic scene, the demon dragon spread its wings and soared into the sky. The various warriors faced the terrifying demon dragon, but none of them had any fear. They bravely raised their weapons and took on a challenging stance. The battle music became louder and louder, as if it had reached its climax. The moment the warriors fought the demon dragon, the entire scene suddenly stopped. These people were instantly dumbfounded. This promotional video was too exciting. Which warrior didn't want to challenge such a powerful creature? Who didn't want to experience the feeling of challenging their limits? But in the real world, they only had one life. No one would do something stupid like throwing away their life. Even if they wanted to slay a dragon, the dragon might not even care about them. The natives all felt a surge of anger in their chests. They wanted to shout excitedly and immediately rush to the training field to experience it. Even if they had to spend a lot of source stones, they had to give it a try. How many times would they have such an opportunity in their lives? Moreover, the airship's broadcast price was only 5 low-grade source stones each time. Everyone instantly went crazy. 5 primordial stones was enough to fight an evil dragon? Was there anything more pleasurable in this world than this? The only regret now was that the new training field wasn't finished yet. So before the new training field was opened, these people could only pass time in the small training field. Once this virtual spiritual technology was developed, it immediately obtained a large success. At least it won the favor of these forest warriors, and large amounts of source stones flowed into their pockets. Chu Tian planned to build a spiritual library in the future to lure the forest scholars. The time flow in the spiritual space was very slow. So studying in the spiritual library for a month was equivalent to studying in the real world for a year. At that time, not only would the gnome scholars go crazy, but the other forest scholars would also rush to join. Miracle City's popularity would increase. This was just the beginning. First collect and then release. Miracle City would first gather its popularity, and when it matured, it would be able to develop freely. When the spiritual technology matured and the spiritual energy network was built, each tribe and city would be able to build a spiritual library, a trial field, and an arena. The entire forest of chaos would be connected, and Miracle City would rule over people's entertainment, lives, and studies. The new trial field will take a few more days to finish. Chu Tian looked at the castle being rebuilt in front of him. We don't need our help here, so we'll use this time to do something else. Nangong, help me bring a group of experts over. They have to be at least in the 3rd true spirit layer. What do you need all these experts for? Why are you asking so much? Of course it's useful. But boss, you've already said that they are experts. Do you think they will come as you please? Stupid. Just tell the people that help this city lord, after the new trial field is finished, I'll let them try it out for free 10 times, right? Nangong Yun immediately ran over to gather people, and before she even disappeared, She had brought 30-40 forest experts with her. Even if these people weren't chiefs, they were all famous heroes in the nearby forest. They were all arrogant normally, but they were all called over by a single sentence from Chu Tian. I want to ask everyone for help, I don't know if. City Lord, don't say any more. An orc jumped out. The City Lord's matter is our matter. That's right. The City Lord has helped us this much. What does it matter if we help the City Lord with a bit? Chu Tian didn't waste time and found Clark and the other gnomes to lead the way. He led these people to ride the elevator underground. That's right, Chu Tian found all these experts for no other reason than the Eye of the Star. The Eye of the Star was the core of the transport tower. The Eye of the Star fragments were also the main materials for making transport scrolls. The Eye of the Star had a chance to reach the perfection realm of the Chu Tian immortal body. Whether it was for the development of the city or to increase his own strength, Chu Tian needed to kill the star elementals and obtain large amounts of Eye of the Star. But the star elementals were too dangerous. After the last lesson, Chu Tian didn't dare act rashly, so he used several days to prepare. The star elementals were very strong, but they didn't have any intelligence. No matter how strong this fellow was, it wouldn't be a problem for Chu Tian. Chu Tian first made a talisman that could block and weaken elemental perception. Everyone had one on them, and when they needed to use it, the talisman's effect would interfere with the perception of the star elementals. Other than that, Chu Tian also prepared a bait to attract the star elementals and an array to restrain the power of the stars. This was a three-way preparation. Now he had recruited several dozen experts. What did these star elementals count for? After Chu Tian cleared out the star elementals, not only would he be able to buy several dozen Eye of the Star, he would also be able to start mining this star mine. In the future, he would be able to produce meteor grass and star stones, which would be enough to train more powerful soldiers for Chu Tian. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.